Brian Vaughn and Van Lee are two friends and lifelong Star Wars fans, but their love of George Lucas's Space Baby is not the same. For Van, his obsessive fandom allowed him to win the 2019 Star Wars Trivia in the Park contest in Springfield, Missouri, where his defeat of a man who brought a 2-liter of Diet Mountain Dew to a 1-hour event is local legend. For Brian, he thinks it's okay to call clone troopers stormtroopers. It's here that their fandom collides as the duo watch and comment on the movies, shows, and stories as only one nerd and one super nerd can. It's podcast, A Star Wars Story. Welcome back, everyone, to Podcast, A Star Wars Story. It's me, your host, Van Lee, joined once again by Mr. Brian Vaughn. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Hey, thanks for welcoming me. I just arrived on my speeder, my land speeder.
How was the trip?
It took me no time at all. I borrowed it from a guy by the name of Tyrannus.
Oh, okay. Seems like a cool dude based on the name.
I don't imagine he has any sort of sordid past I should worry about.
I really like your cool cape, too. Really ties the whole look together.
He gave that to me, too. It's a little long. It's dragging on the floor. No, he had a backup.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I think he got a new one.
He carried several capes with him.
Yeah, he sold this one to me for like 13 Starlons.
That's the new currency, I take it.
Yeah, I think he really fleeced me on this one.
It would be credits. That's very, very basic and boring. Credits.
Well, that's all I could actually come up with, and I was like, that can't be right. There has to be something else.
Republic Datteries? That was a thing. Where am I remembering that from?
Is Galactic credits specifically, is that a thing?
I think that's more when the Empire comes around.
What about credits of the Republic?
Sure, let's go with that right now. Well, if you can't tell, by the way, we're finally wrapping up what is largely considered to be the worst Star Wars movie, Attack of the Clones, Part 2, and we have just a ton of stuff to discuss, so I'd like to get into this, but first, I found out on Disney Plus, Brian, and if you're out there listening to this, get yourself a Disney Plus subscription, or actually, why don't you not do that? Disney sucks, so don't do that.
What do you mean, they shouldn't support the little guy?
Yeah, the little Disney guy, little Mickey Mouse, he's struggling out there. But if you do happen to have one, you can go to all the different Star Wars movies, and they have a little subsection where they show all the deleted scenes, behind the scenes stuff, all kinds of cool extra content. And I was kind of thumbing through this and I found a lot of the deleted scenes that I'd never seen before. So I want to discuss some of these. We'll cover the ones that we missed from last episode, first half of the movie. And then I've put the deleted scenes for the movie parts we're covering today in their appropriate spots. So first off, I want to talk about that there's a deleted scene where Padme addresses the Senate about the Separatists. Jar Jar learns kind of the urgency of her mission in this one. And then, of course, the most important part of this deleted scene, Mos Amedda, who's the horned demon guy, the apprentice. Not apprentice.
You're going to have to be more specific.
He's the horned demon guy friend of Palpatine, who's always around him.
Okay, again, though. Oh, Darth Maul's not around anymore.
No, not anymore. Okay. He was cut in half. This guy sticks his tongue out at the Senate and then goes, order, but it's not like Senate. It is completely inappropriate.
Well, do you know how their tongues work?
I do not.
Maybe they need to do all that to generate a sound.
Now that you mention it, that could be the case.
More complicated tongues than we have.
We also have a great deleted scene where Obi-Wan visits the archive droids at the Jedi Temple. They analyze the dart that, of course, he found that killed Zam Wesell, and they have no information. They're like, we're sorry, this does not match any markings, so therefore it's not real. You'll just listen to us, we're droids. Obi-Wan then gets the dart back, looks at it, and goes, I know who can identify this. Dexter Jettster.
Ah, okay. So that was a case of George Lucas showing his work a little too much.
Too much, yeah. Just like, how would we believe that Obi-Wan gets to go to see Dexter Jettster? Let's make him point it out loudly.
Man, I can't find another believable way for Obi-Wan, who has space powers, to visit a toad whose butt crack is hanging out.
Sexy toad. In the Jedi library, Jocasta Nu approaches Obi-Wan and asks if he needs assistance, and he's currently looking at the enormous Count Dooku bust in the library, like chest up kind of bust.
The guy looks like Lord Tyrannus.
A little bit. I can see the resemblance. Her panties, of course, get super wet at this. She brags all about Count Dooku. Apparently, she calls Dooku and Qui-Gon idealists, and then she just yells at Kenobi for bothering her.
Which actually adds more to the fire of my theory that she could have been with Count Dooku at some point.
Like they fooled around, yeah.
Maybe she's kind of really covering for him, though, still.
Could be. Maybe if not intentionally, it's just like, I'll do this because there's no way he did that.
Kamino, what are you talking about? And again, the moistness.
And then when on the refugee ship where Padme and Anakin are fleeing to Naboo, Padme wakes Anakin from a nightmare and asks if it was about his mother. And he does that thing that Anakin does, where he just mumbles a little bit and then gets mad at her.
Yeah, you mean Anakin.
Super important deleted scene. Anakin, yeah, let's clarify. Of all the characters that mumble and get mad at Padme, we mean Anakin. A little bit later, Padme and Anakin arrive on Naboo and they banter some more. There's a bunch of stuff about Padme thinking waterfalls are cool. And then it just goes on for like an hour. So I can see why they cut this one.
I don't know. I kind of am compelled to go back and watch that.
In another deleted scene, Mace takes Obi-Wan to the airport, and the two talk about a Jedi possibly erasing the information from the library. And then Kenobi tells Mace Anakin has a crush on Padme, and, basically saying, my Padawan is not ready for this mission. He says he sees now why Mace and Yoda didn't want Anakin to be trained in the first place. But Mace pulls a Qui-Gon and says just, whatever happens, happens, man. Mace goes ahead and gives Kenobi a little kiss, and then they just fly off to Kamino.
I think that could have stood to be included in the movie. More questioning of what Anakin's deal is.
And then there are a couple of deleted scenes where Padme takes Anakin to meet her parents. I didn't know her parents existed in Star Wars.
What?
They did. You see several of these scenes where you actually get to meet her mom, dad, and sister.
Yeah, and her dad's like, can you milk me, Anakin? Meet the parents.
I get it, because the cat, you can milk
People
the cat.
love those movies.
For some reason.
What? Have you seen those?
No.
I've seen the first two.
Really?
Uh-huh.
How many are there?
I don't know, probably 10.
When you said the first two, I thought, well, that's all of them,
I think
right?
there's at least 2 or 3, yeah.
Yikes.
And they're not good.
Well, all of these characters have lunch together, and Padme's sister says, this is the first boyfriend Padme ever brought home. But faster than Han pulling the trigger, Padme shuts it down again. She goes, no. He's not my boyfriend. He's a bodyguard assigned to me by the Jedi Council. Definitely nothing going on here. And then the whole time, Anakin's just sitting there and taking it while just staring angrily at his plate.
I wish I was back home on Tattooine playing with ball.
Then Dad and Anakin go out to have a stroll and they chat in the garden. We find out that Padme's father was once a construction worker. Meanwhile, all the girls do dishes, and it's like we're now watching a very shitty Jane Austen novel because Padme's sister just keeps giving her shit about crushing on Anakin.
Or the
she
Hobbit.
Just keeps shutting it down. Yeah, that's true. They didn't sing a mean song about Anakin.
But all those dishes.
And then finally, Anakin and Padme are in her room, and we get like a dirty, jazzy beat kind of starts to play. No, that doesn't happen.
Oh.
I wish. Actually, Padme talks about loving her wonderful childhood, and Anakin, being Anakin, pipes up and says, well, I was a slave, so I never had a home.
Which is true.
He's basically a real bummer.
Again, like, Anakin. This is a character who makes someone with that plight wholly unlikable.
Well, he actually starts asking her about, like, pictures on her wall. And by the way, they're holographic pictures. Like, they move.
Oh, because it's Star Wars.
It's like those picture frames you buy that you plug in and you can put several pictures in them and then they switch.
Yeah, why
I don't know.
Okay. And it's also, I guess, kind of like the pictures in Hogwarts.
Oh, okay. That's true.
You might be able to go into those sometimes.
Are
Or
those
people come out of
sentient?
them. Some of them are ghosts, I think.
Padme actually points one picture out and tells a horrible story behind it. She went to a planet as part of a humanitarian aid group because the planet's sun was about to explode.
Well, that's not good.
Well, she helps them to try and adapt to the atmosphere to a different planet, but it doesn't work and they're all swallowed by their sun and die.
Oh, her too? Because that would really change everything quite a bit.
Anakin didn't have any reaction to this. He just kind of listened to the story and was like, okay.
Well, no, that checks out because he is a straight up psychopath.
So that's it for those deleted scenes that we missed last episode.
I had one too,
up.
actually.
What was
this is actually from the first. Hold on.
Oh, from Phantom Menace?
This is from Phantom Menace, and it says at the end of the Bunta Eve pod race, Anakin Skywalker is shown as the champion, yet the actual winner of the race was the Doug Sebulba.
Where can one view this deleted scene?
I seem to have misplaced the my reference.
What a great journalist you are.
God, do you want a bibliography, Dad?
That's James Joyce's dad, basically.
Bibliography, Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah, that probably was.
He was the first author I could think of. Did you know James Joyce wrote a bunch of like love letters to his mistress or whatever, and they were all talking about farts and anal sex?
No.
Go look it up. They're fascinating.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Obviously, he's a poet. He has a very good way of writing, and he's talking about the little fluttery farts that come out of your butt.
It takes a special kind of penmanship to be able to talk about a butt in that way.
Well, we can get right into this movie because, like I said, there's a lot to cover. When we last spoke with you, Obi-Wan had had a fight with the same person, but at different ages, and Anakin had bad dreams about his mom, so he and his favorite senator are headed to the setting of 95% of Star Wars, Tattooine. And it's here where we pick back up as we watch an exceptionally shiny starship deliver the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker, and Nebulian Senator Padme Amidala to Mos Eisley, which is a trading port on the desert planet. We already saw a whole lot of Tattooine in the last movie, so we're kind of already prepared for a bunch of weird shit. Of course, weird shit is certainly what we're in store for, and right away we could see Anakin and Padme being ferried around the town on a robot-pulled rickshaw, which seems pretty cool.
With some of the technology we've seen, though, I feel like there's a better way to do this.
It just feels like they went backwards in time with this one.
Yeah, Yoda has a floating chair.
Well, once they arrive at their location, Anakin tells the labor bot to wait right there, to which the robot replies, "Okie dokie." What is their destination, you might ask? Why, it's a certain junk peddler's shop. That peddler? Watto. Doesn't take long. We're right back to Watto here.
And Watto, the years have been kind to Watto. He is jacked.
Well, it has been 10 years since we've seen him, but he doesn't look a day older, in my opinion. Still just as cute as ever.
Mm-hmm.
His wardrobe has changed slightly, though. I mean, sure, he still has his sexy thong, but he's also sporting like a tunic, like a Legend of Zelda tunic.
Yeah, to cover up a little more with age.
I wonder if there was like outcry in some capacity, like, why is Watto so nude? And George Lucas thought, I'd better give him a different outfit for this one.
They're right. Look at the honkers on Watto.
Well, I'll give you an example. In the first couple of seasons of the Clone Wars cartoon show, Anakin's Padawan Ahsoka, who we've seen in The Mandalorian and so forth, she had just like a tube top, and she was supposed to be like a 12-year-old, so it's not sexual or anything.
Right.
But it's a little jarring to see that she was always like near nude at any given time. They give her a different outfit after the first couple of seasons.
Well, that makes a little more sense than Watto, who is fluttering about Gonzo from the Muppets, basically, only like Gonzo gone rotten.
That's the DVD series you buy off the streets.
You won't believe what these Gonzos are doing.
He also has a really cool upside-down plate on his head for a hat. He's done that thing that a lot of us do as we age, which is he's grown a little bit of a beard.
Yeah, and it's like a crappy one.
It's ratty and
It's
gross.
like a 4-day stubble, kind of.
Still a beard, nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's trying to cover up his jowls.
Watto is here working on the severed head of a pit droid using a screwdriver when Anakin approaches him and offers to help the seal gremlin by fixing the robot. Watto's off-put by this and happens to catch a glimpse of Anakin's lightsaber. And no, that's not a euphemism, Brian. He says, "A Jedi, I haven't done anything wrong. It wasn't me." As he says this, he drops the screwdriver and we get some blink, blonk, bloop whimsy noises. Anakin fixes the robot. He places it down in front of Watto, looks up at his former owner, I might point out, saying, "I'm looking for Shmi Skywalker."
So, one quick note here. Watto was way calmer under pressure around Jedi 10 years prior.
So are you implying something happened?
I think he's up to some really nefarious shit.
What do you think he's doing? Because he's been a slaver. We know that. But I guess that's
what's
acceptable.
Worse than that? I don't really know. But even that, Qui-Gon just kind of winked it away.
I'll tell you what it is. He's pirating Star Wars videos.
You mean, well, yeah, and George Lucas might believe that to be the worst crime.
Well, as Anakin says this to Watto, he pieces some things together and lets out a soft whisper, barely gracing his bloated lips. "Annie? Little Annie? It is you! Well, what do you know?
Can I bum a smoke?
A Jedi at that!" He asks his former slave if he'd be interested in getting some money out of some deadbeats for him, but Anakin cuts him off and instead repeats the question about his mother.
Right away. Watto wasted no time to basically being like, what kind of scheme can we run together now that you're big and have a cool rat tail?
She's not mine no more. I sold her.
You sold her?
Years ago. Sorry, Annie, but you know, business is business, huh? I sold her to a moisture farmer named Lars. At least I think it was Lars. Believe it or not, I heard he freed her and married her. Tell me a bit of that, eh? Yeah.
Oh, you sold my mom to a man who married her. That doesn't sound awful at all.
I think you can beat that. As it turns out, freeing her and letting her live a life as a person maybe would beat that.
Well, Anakin, for some reason, isn't immediately delighted his mother was sold into being someone's wife, and he asks Watto if he knows where the Lars homestead is. The former Toydarian warrior and current scrap peddler waffles a bit, and Anakin has to continue pestering him, but eventually Watto agrees to take a look at his records.
There is no way that this guy keeps paper records.
You think he has one filing cabinet?
Yeah, and I don't think he's actively updated it in 20 years.
Probably full of, like, bugs or whatever it is Watto collects and eats.
Maybe, like, I don't know, things he's stolen from people.
Meanwhile, we see the Fett starship approaching a planet with some cool rings, not unlike Saturn in our very own solar system. But before they reach the surface, Obi-Wan Kenobi's starship comes out of slipstream. Oh, sorry. Hyperspace. Excuse me.
I can see how you'd be confused.
Young Boba Fett sees him first, and father and son decide to fly into the nearby asteroid field to try and get the slip on their Jedi pursuer. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Jango says, "Once we get into the asteroid field, we'll have a couple of surprises for him." And then Boba responds to this by cackling like a cartoon villain, and I just really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was pretty funny to me, too. It really came out of nowhere, and I did not remember it. The fact that Boba was, like, out for blood as a 10-year-old.
And the kid's having fun with the roll.
Yeah, he is.
He's having a blast.
Rolls. Again, there's, like, a million of them.
As we see the Fett fire spray fly into the asteroid field, the ship's butthole opens up and a glowing cylinder falls out of it.
I believe the correct term is sarlacc.
Oh, excuse me. It starts floating backwards towards Obi-Wan, and the Jedi's trusty droid R4 beeps and whistles, and Obi-Wan, who is currently wearing his tiara, tells us it's a seismic charge and tries valiantly to get a safe distance from it. The charge finds itself flying into an asteroid, and when it detonates, it lets off a noise that, I'm not joking, Brian, for some reason when I was a kid, I loved this noise. And I don't know how a noise can infatuate me so much, but the wow sound, I thought it was so cool.
I was really into the door opening and closing noises, basically on any ship in the original trilogy. I don't know if you can think of them right now.
Yeah, I can hear it in my head. Interesting.
I can just recall them. Found them very pleasing.
We were fucking weirds when we were kids, man. I mean, we're weird now, but
yeah, well,
imagine back then when we had no inhibitions.
I know, and no one would let us record ourselves talking about it.
The detonation causes ripples to fly through space, causing asteroids all over the place to explode and splinter, but Obi-Wan does manage to avoid the destruction. Jango sets off more seismic charges, but Obi-Wan continues to remain in one piece, which causes Jango to say to Boba, "He doesn't seem to take a hint, this guy. Why won't he just let me murder him with bombs?" And there's a whole bunch of CGI space stuff here that just keeps going down, and eventually Jango winds up behind Obi-Wan, and he fires a Ewan McGregor-seeking missile at him. But just before he's destroyed, R4 releases Obi-Wan's garbage from the back of the ship, which causes the missile to detonate safely behind him while he settles into the side of a nearby asteroid. What do you think his garbage was, like old Pringles cans?
Yeah, like magazines, Field and Stream.
Okay, good housekeeping, maybe?
Good housekeeping. Yeah, I mean, he likes to keep a tidy cave.
But you know what? He probably has one Mad magazine or one Cracked, because
he likes to have a joke a little bit. And he has like a Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue from a few years ago.
But he can play that off as being like, no, I always get Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, like I used to have a subscription, so I got this. I didn't purposefully go out and buy it. No, I don't know why this one doesn't have my address tag on the front.
Where have we seen this before, by the way? Space garbage? Hiding from a ship? A Fett nearby? Well, maybe actually this is where Boba learned the trick. So in Empire Strikes Back, he's like, my dad shot some garbage out, so maybe I'll search for Han Solo, and then found him. Because, you know, they talk the same.
Okay.
He's older.
Oh, well, I guess they kind of do. It's not because it's Tamura Morrison, though. It's not just because it's the same actor.
And by the way, that is what Lucas was intending. That this mirrored, because it's the second movie.
He really did intend that? Okay. Well, good for him. I just assumed
because it's a little more, not subtle, but not identical.
For Star Wars, I think it's pretty subtle.
Well, for example, The Force Awakens, if it was that, they would have just copy-pasted with new characters.
Yeah, exactly. They would have just retold it identically. I also do think it's funny, though, that once again, the Fets leave this scenario thinking like, well, let's not check on it, he's dead.
Yes, we got him.
Which is exactly how they left the last scene that they were all in.
Thinking Kenobi blew up in the explosion, Jango says to Boba, well, we won't be seeing him again. So Boba responds with,
remaining very evil.
Jango and Boba continue flying to that ringed planet, And as they approach a landing pad, we get to see some cool giant orbs. They look like the Technodrome from Ninja Turtles. Well, you haven't thought about that in a while, have you?
No, not in a long while.
I wish Krang were in Star Wars.
Yeah, or Bebop and Rocksteady.
Which one, the Seamus version
or
from
what about,
the new movie?
Yes, for sure. He'd be Brogue kicking everybody. What is the Pig Man? Isn't there a Pig Man villain in Ninja Turtles?
Well, I guess that would be Bebop.
Is that Bebop?
Because Bebop's the pig. He's like a punk pig.
Oh, he is the pig.
Rocksteady's a rhinoceros.
A rhino. He's definitely a rhino.
Mhm.
What are some of the other main villains? Not Krang.
Well, there's Leatherhead.
Leatherhead, the Cajun
turtle,
alligator.
Or Cajun alligator, yeah.
Yeah, he's a guy who likes to eat Zatarans and human hands in
And
equal measure.
He uses crayfish as weapons, like they pinch out of his hands. There's also the Rat King who lives in the sewers, and he's just dirty.
Now, is he like the Rat King myth where it's a bunch of rats that get their tails tied together?
No, it's one guy with a tail tied to a bunch of other guys with a tail.
More like Chuck E. Cheese, then.
Okay, explain.
I just assume that's what goes on in there.
Okay. Let's see.
They have a whole band of rats that sing to the kids, right?
I don't know if it's more than one rat.
Maybe not.
But
Maybe
I'm
it's
not
a rat
comfortable
and
to
like
say
a
that.
turtle
And like
and a
cup
tiger and like a platypus.
and one pizza slice. Well, there's also like those weird teenager pixies from Dimension X and Ninja Turtles. There's a lot going on in Ninja Turtles.
They didn't show. I feel like I'm missing another big villain too. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe for Boob Two
Well,
Boys,
Shredder.
we'll cover the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Boob Two Boys? What, is that some other kind of show
Yeah,
on the Boot Doing Podcast Network?
It sure is. It's a podcast where you, me, and our friend Spencer Hendricks talk about all sorts of TV shows.
That's right. Go check it out wherever you get your podcasts. Obi-Wan waits a bit and continues his way to the planet, finding a nice rocky alcove to park at. He jumps out of his ship and begins his search. Well, Brian, I think it's time to head back to Tattooine.
Thank God.
Look, I can tell right now you've never been more excited to see what Anakin and Padme are up to, because as they approach the Lars homestead in the middle of a desert, a familiar voice cries out. One that you know and love, my friend. It's the whiniest voice in all of the Star Wars universe, C-3PO.
This scene, before I got around to anything else in my notes, it says, thank God C-3PO is here.
I just put something together. You, of course, have won the Eric Carabell Whiniest Voice in Podcasting Award.
That's true.
C-3PO is the whiniest voice in Star Wars. No wonder you have such a connection to him.
Yeah, that is true. And I'm
beautiful.
also golden.
That's true, yes.
And sometimes I just get beheaded, but they put it back on later.
Like a lot.
Yeah,
More
after
than
some
once.
assembly line hijinks.
And then you always yell at the person putting you back together.
Oh, yeah. After probably also disseminating some facts that I know.
Well, let's back up a second, though. When we come to visit C-3PO, he's in the middle of doing something with a robot. It's one of those robots in Star Wars that looks like, what are those handheld vacuum things that they're not powered? We had one at the bowling alley we worked at.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They don't work at all.
They don't work. It seems like a good tool, and maybe they have expensive ones that work.
But the one we had sure did.
It did not. It was very old.
Well, anyway, C-3PO standing, I don't know, in front of that with its two eyes near his crotch. You think he was like trying to send a C-3PO like circuit pick to someone?
I think he was at least thinking about the idea of a crotch level vacuum apparatus.
Okay.
You know,
you're bored out here in the desert, you experiment.
Yeah, and I don't know, like C-3PO's penis too, like how it works.
Fun story. I can't believe this led into this. There was an old trading card from the 70s where it was a picture of C-3PO where something was misplaced.
You know, his big golden hogs hanging out.
It looks like that. And it became worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to find this card.
No wonder.
Until someone realized that they actually printed like 10,000 of these. And you can find them pretty easily. So it's not worth as much now. But for a while, C-3PO's dick was worth a lot.
Hold on, I need to get on eBay.
C3
C-3PO penis card, 1978.
Anyway, he greets the Jedi and Senator and begins to do his whole spiel thing when Anakin recognizes him. C-3PO puts all the pieces together and realizes who these two are and refers to Anakin as the Maker.
You just know Anakin got off on that, too.
Anakin tells 3PO he's here to see his mother, and the robot does what he does best. He hems and haws and says, well, we'd better go inside. Inside the house, Anakin is introduced to Owen Lars and his girlfriend Beru Whiteson. Owen is played by Australian actor Joel Edgerton.
Edge Dog.
And he's one of those now prolific actors that this was one of his first big roles. And actually, he loves it. He credits his success to Star Wars. And he was more than happy to come back for the Kenobi series to be Owen Lars later on in life. And I always appreciate that. And I like him a lot as an actor, so it's really cool.
He's great. I loved seeing him in the Kenobi series, just being a total curmudgeon.
Mm-hmm. And Beru is played by Australian actor Bonnie Peace. She has also continued acting to this day. Hasn't had quite the career he's had, but she's had some roles. And she came back for Kenobi as well. Turns out Owen is now Anakin's stepbrother, as his father Klieg Lars married Anakin's mother. Again, after purchasing her from Watto.
Yeah, so let's talk about this for a moment. The movie sort of portrays Klieg as like a knight in shining armor for Shmi, in a way. Oh, she had this horrible life of slavery, just like Anakin did before, and no one saved her, but thankfully Klieg was able to purchase her, and then over time, probably through Stockholm Syndrome, was able to convince her to fall in love with him.
I think Lucas's intention is that this was a knight in shining armor, a daring thing where he saved up and bought her, and I'll have more information about how this transpired later, but no, to me, this is disgusting.
Because at this point, there might be an explanation like that, like they met and he fell in love with her and realized that was the only way to free her, but we're not given that explanation. Watto explains it more like, you buy a human, sometimes you fall in love.
Maybe he's done it, we don't know.
He certainly has bought humans, and I'd imagine he was in love with at least Anakin.
Anakin asks Owen and Beru if his mother's here, and we hear a gruff voice cry out, "No, she's not." And we get to meet Klieg Lars. He comes hovering over to Anakin. He's on one of those Walmart shopping scooters that you never see actual disabled people use. It's only just like really obese people. That's it.
Or people that need to go real fast. Oh, wait, no, those are slow.
Klieg, who I'll remind you, bought his wife, shakes Anakin's hand and tells the boy in a somber tone that they have a lot to talk about. Now, I neglected to mention that the Lars clan here, they're all moisture farmers by trade, which means that they harvest moisture from the atmosphere. They keep some and they sell the rest to local towns.
Right, because this is a sand planet, essentially.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't always. Tatooine was once lush and beautiful, much like another sci-fi series' desert planet, but is now turned to desert.
Yep. And as a result, it is the most unappealing visual planet. So let's spend all of our time there in the Star Wars series.
Inside the house, Beru serves everyone a delicious cup of purple, while Klieg tells Anakin the horrible truth about his mother. It turns out a hunting party of Tusken Raiders snatched Shmi Skywalker one morning when she was picking mushrooms. The grizzled old man says he gathered 30 strong moisture-farming men who went out to try and rescue his purchased wife. Only 4 came back, and in the scuffle, Klieg was injured, losing his leg.
At this point, I think Klieg is going to say, it is a lost cause. Your mom has been gone for 5 years. That's what I thought. Based on his description, he seems like all hope is lost.
He continues that it's been a full month since she was taken.
He's like, fuck it. I'm telling you right now, don't even bother trying. It's been 28 days.
He just says there's nothing he can do while his leg heals. Anakin is distraught and stands up to leave when Klieg tells him his mother is dead. Just accept it.
It's been at least 5-6 hours. She must be dead.
Also, it's not like you're some sort of magical wizard who could aggressively annihilate an entire Tusken Raider village. Anakin borrows the Laros' speeder bike and sets off to find his mother, and we see him speeding through the canyons he once raced through as a boy, as well as talking to Jawas, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it happens.
It's really bad in this one.
The whole time this is happening, we also get to hear the familiar doo-doo-doo-loo, which I appreciate.
I love the doo-doo-doo-doo.
Duel of the Fates is the name of that song.
It works well.
It's a good one. We cut back to the planet Geonosis, where Obi-Wan is wandering through some caves with his space mullet, and he stumbles across a giant factory where he can see battle droids being mass-produced. And that's not all he stumbles across, however, as we finally hear the deep, sultry voice of Christopher Lee ring out, and it's here, at minute 76 of this movie, that we meet the villain promised in the opening crawl, Count Dooku. Dooku isn't alone, though. He's currently talking about getting the Commerce Guild and the Corporate Alliance to sign the treaty to a delightful group of monsters that we will come to know as the Separatist Council. We'll cover most of these creatures here in a bit, but one member of the council here doesn't seem to care what Dooku has to say, and instead is preoccupied with the senator from Naboo.
Yep.
Newt Gunray!
That's right, our big buddy Newt. Well, he's not very big. Our buddy Newt is back. And, before they even show Dooku talking to Newt and company here, you're hearing Christopher Lee and Newt Gunray.
Those are some of the most distinct voices you can have.
You hear basically like, "Oh, we'll have to see what the agreement is," and I mean, you'd know him from miles away.
Well, Newt only cares that Padme is killed and says he's not signing Dooku's treaty until Amidala's head is on his desk. But I mean, I'm not evil or anything. I want a head legally.
So why is he still so into Amidala's death 10 years later? She's like retired.
Well, if I want to loralize this, which is a weird way to say
Which is to turn someone into Lauren Graham's character from Gilmore Girls.
I knew you were going there. I knew it the second your mouth opened.
You're the one that said loralize and expected anything different.
Fair enough. Basically, Newt Gunray's species, the Nemoidians, they are so fickle and manipulative and mean and greedy that if something bothers them, they're not going to stop.
They'll just hold that grudge forever.
Mm-hmm. I totally get it. And he does this entire freaking movie.
It's almost like you could replace Nemoidian with American. Am I right, guys?
His name is Newt.
That's true. Yeah, see?
And I didn't mention this previously, but there's another Nemoidian that we do see named Lot Dodd. Do you remember Trent Lott?
Yeah.
That's who that's based on.
Wow.
Yeah,
so
Lucas did not like it.
Well, good for Lucas for,
I know. It's one of the few things.
Disliking total abject scum. Now, what happened to Newt's lover from the previous movie? Yes.
This is interesting because I believe we see Rune quite a bit through this movie. However, it's a different voice. And so I Googled this. I was like, who's the other Nemoidian? Most of the internet says it's him. So I don't know. Something's amiss with this.
So I think they've had a falling out then.
Okay.
In the intervening decade. Because before they were like hip to hip, talking about everything together, being frightened together.
Well, if you remember in Phantom Menace, Rune's voice was like, we will not survive this.
Yeah.
The voice from this friend that he has with him at all times in this movie is more evil and like this. So I don't know if it's the same character or not.
Yeah, it almost comes across like he's trying to act more masculine to impress Newt. Like maybe that was part of their falling out, was Rune was like always a little too effete or something.
So maybe Rune, by the way, is trying to overcompensate because he thinks Newt wants a big, strong Nemoidian
It's
boyfriend.
The same reason he puts that fucking pair of socks in the front of his pants.
Dooku assures the Viceroy that he is a man of his word, and soon enough, the senator will be terminated. Obi-Wan overhears all of this and continues to sneak around to try and figure out what's going on. By this point, the wise council has made their way to the conference cave and are situated around a big glowy table.
This is probably the best scene in the movie.
You think so? I think it's up there.
It's a table full of goons.
And they are goons. And it appears that this is the tradition of this podcast. We are presented with an array of hideous monsters presented in group format.
Yeah, it's like the best part of Star Wars is an array of hideous monsters that you kind of just have to take in.
Mm-hmm. Well, the important members of this group include Shu Mai. She's a female of the Gossam species who is president of the Commerce Guild. She's got a cool cornucopia-shaped hat. She's a shrewd business creature, that one. Next up is the leader of the Techno Union, Wat Tambor. He's a Skakoan male, has a huge army made up of droids and war machines. In addition to wearing a dress with a bunch of knobs on it, he also has some cool steampunk goggles. We have Poggle the Lesser. He's a Geonosian archduke, and as we'll find out much later, he's responsible for the designs of the Death Star.
Which one?
Both.
Oh, wow.
Well, maybe they tweaked it. I don't know. Would you say the first guy who invented the toilet, you say he's the inventor of the toilet, although maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, but maybe he forgot to put the hole in the middle of it.
So does that work? I mean, if they prove the second Death Star that much.
I think it's one of those things where you have to say them both in the same breath. Like, this guy invented the toilet. This guy invented the toilet, though, that actually worked.
Okay.
Like, the Wright brothers invented planes, I guess.
Even though they're not really planes compared to what we think of.
Right. But really, more who invented planes is probably like Samuel L. Jackson and those snakes.
Yeah.
Probably.
Mace Windu.
I know a lot about aviation.
And Geonosians, as I mentioned before, they're the big bug creatures. Poggle is a mean one, but he also has a cool, like, bone cane that he walks around with.
It's probably someone he conquered.
Oh, surely.
Like their femur.
And then there's San Hill. He's a member of the Moon species, Muun. He's chairman of the Intergalactic Banking Clan, and he's actually the one responsible for creating General Grievous, our villain from the next movie. He was tutored by fellow Moon Banking Clan member Higo Damask, otherwise known as Darth Plagueis.
The Wise?
Mm-hmm. We also have Pascal Argente. He's got long, pointy green fingers. T-Case, the Quarren position, who is a big old squid head. And by the way, shout out to @Dan_Grievous, a.k.a. Dan the T-Case fan on Twitter, because he provided a link showing how to actually pronounce this stupid name. So that helped me anyway. And then finally we have Po Nudo, who's a bipedal human being with a spider's head, which I'm sure is right out of your nightmares.
Yeah, I took one look at that and immediately, I guess I was going to say turned it off, but clearly I didn't. I have more to say about the movie. And if I was going to turn this thing off, it already would have happened.
Long time ago. Dooku continues to tell the council that he's convinced 10,000 more systems will rally to his cause if this roundtable of gentlemen will announce their support. Shu Mai says what Dooku is proposing could be construed as treason, so she's a little wary of making this deal. But why don't we just take a listen into what Wat Tambor has to say about it?
Please do that.
The Techno-Union Army is at your disposal, Count.
Now, the whole time he's talking, he's fiddling with his knobs on his dress. I can't take him seriously, though, calling himself head of the Techno-Union when he doesn't even have a single glow stick in front of him.
No.
Not like a big, cool, glowy hat, either.
This guy has never once, taken Molly and then danced around to non-music.
Not once. Okay, let's move on to San Hill. What does San Hill think of Count Dooku's plan?
Their banking clan will sign your treaty.
Good, very good.
Okay, well, Dooku's pleased with this. What I'm concerned about is why San Hill sounds like a prospector from the 1850s.
I don't know. Another thing that's confusing me about this conversation is all of this seems like it would have been discussed somewhat prior.
No, all right here.
Before everybody convened on this one planet to have this big meeting, I would think they have a working plan. Do you think Obi-Wan's like, thank God I didn't get here 10 minutes later?
I missed everything.
I would not know anything that was going on.
Well, San Hill continues on. There's gold in them hills.
What in the Sand Hill?
Anyway, Dooku continues saying once they all combine their robots, they'll have the largest army in the galaxy, and the Jedi will be forced to acquiesce to any demands they make.
And this kind of lends to my point further, which is Count Dooku's whole thing is he's like, if we have more army, we win. And everyone's like, holy fucking shit, he's right.
He's so smart. That's right, he's a smart fella, he is.
Man, no wonder that librarian banged him.
Well, we have a bit of behind-the-scenes info here. I believe this is the scene where originally, standing behind Count Dooku, we were going to see Jango Fett. But Lucas thought he wanted to leave a little bit of mystery still to this point, so he actually removed Jango and replaced him with
Colonel
what
Sanders.
I think is Rune Hako. I wish.
No, it probably is supposed to be Rune. I mean, it's just the voice thing.
I know, takes away.
Yeah.
I miss Rune.
Rune's a more submissive character than this version, this hardened version of Rune seems to be.
He's seen some shit, man.
And probably been through it.
Back on Tattooine, Anakin is peeking down a cliff at a group of tents in the desert below, and we see that this is a large group of Tusken Raiders camping out at night. Skywalker kind of sneaks around to the back of a tent. He uses his lightsaber to cut a hole in the side of it, entering to lay eyes on a badly beaten and bloody mother tied to a bunch of sticks. He rushes over to her to let her down and cradles her when she eventually recognizes the now-grown face of her son. He tells her she's safe, and she says to him, "Oh, you look so handsome. You're like a young Canadian hunk." She then says, "Now I'm complete." And we witness the first of several women who choose to die rather than stay in the company of Anakin Skywalker, which I appreciate.
Don't blame him. And you gotta think Anakin at this point is thinking, man, it's a good thing I didn't arrive 10 minutes later. He witnesses the very last breath his mom has to offer. His mom, who I don't want to take away from the fact that she's been in a Tusken Raider slave encampment.
Yeah.
That's horrible. But what we see here is she is tied up, and then you can tell she's sweaty. She doesn't look particularly near death.
No, she's got a couple of cuts, but
yeah.
I think she willed herself to death.
I'm just going to tell you right now, if you come upon me and I have a couple of surface level cuts, do not kill me.
Are you sure?
Yes.
You're going to need to put this in writing.
Yeah, I'll meet with a lawyer.
What if Anakin's there?
He'll probably kill me. I'll say one thing wrong.
With his mother dying in his arms, the score begins to ramp up, and Hayden Christensen tries his best angry face. We see some little kid Tuskens running along, but they come to a stop at the sound of a lightsaber igniting, and Anakin goes into full genocide mode as he starts chopping and hacking away at the nomadic raiders. As this goes down, Grandmaster Yoda is deep in meditation while sitting on his bedroom toilet, and we hear the anguished cries of the former Qui-Gon Jinn shout out, "Anakin, don't! No!" Jedi Master Mace Windu then enters to join Yoda and sees that his friend and coworker is distraught, so he's like, "What's up?" Yoda tells Windu that something horrible has happened, and that young Anakin Skywalker is in terrible pain. Other than that, though, he's not sure. Well, it's a good time to take a quick break, so let's do that. When we get back, we'll find out what Obi-Wan plans to do about the evil Separatist Council. Welcome, everyone, to the 43rd Annual Sly Moore Fashion and Skin Monster Review. I'm your host, fashion critic Naru Jinzel of Space GQ, and today I'm joined by noted monsterologist Gar Halcor. Well, Gar, we're in store for a great time tonight as we witness the greatest and best fashion trends from across the galaxy. What are you most looking forward to?
As much as I'm here to see the fashion, my focus will be on which monsters are able to best control the spontaneous bursts of their horns and hooves. These sorts of physical reactions are what can undo an otherwise good performance.
It'll be hard to top last year's event when we witnessed Gardula the Hutt wearing a delicious, enormous cardigan designed by Wookiee fashionista Gurwal, but I'm certain we have some surprises in store for you today. Oh, and it looks like we're ready to begin as our first model makes his way to the stage. It's Wat Tambor, leader of the Techno Union, and he's hitting the runway wearing a Geonosian-inspired frock with knobs all over it. He's sure to make an impact on the judges.
Wow, I must say Tambor's really turning his game up to 11 with this bright blue ensemble. Did my ears deceive me, or is that antenna also picking up the recent Gully Ball match between the Feed Dandies and AotC Gunga Submariners?
I'll tell you, Gar, the dress with dials is great, but what a pair of goggles on this Kakoan monster. More like Wat Tambor is going places, if you know what I mean. And look at this. Creeping her way down the runway, we're treated to the robed visage of Jedi Archives librarian Jocasta Nu. And my, oh my, is she a sight for my many eyes.
You know, they call her Jocasta Nu, but she's bringing a lot of the old country to the present with her Asian-inspired kimono and hair chopsticks.
We can certainly expect Count Dooku's once-waning libido to be far more powerful than any Jedi after seeing this beautiful woman.
It's no secret why this racy outfit was deleted from the Jedi Archives.
Watto the Toydarian is flittering down the runway, and today he's featuring a jaunty little banana hammock that leaves far too little to the imagination. But that's not all. This time around, he's adorned with a darling little miniature safari hat that really accentuates his mealy snout.
Well, Noru, if you ask me, it looks like Jedi mind tricks aren't the only thing that doesn't work on Toydarians. I didn't realize we were on Tattooine, but I can see all of the twin suns tonight.
Shockingly unimpressed with the former warrior's outfit tonight, I take it.
It's absolutely hideous, Noru.
Well, hold me like you did by the lake on Naboo. It's our next model, former Queen and current Senator Padme Amidala.
As you can see, Padme is going with the tried and true formula of white on white. Perhaps a splash of color would add some much needed intrigue to her ensemble.
But wait, what's this? A smattering of clothes has been ripped, but conveniently just in the midsection. Gar, I'll bet the nerd boners have increased exponentially.
It appears she's decided to have aggressive negotiations with our judges. I mean that in a sex way.
The Nexu attack doesn't seem to have fazed young Padme, and that makes sense. As a strong, powerful woman, it's not like she's going to die because she's sad or something. That would be a terrible end to her story. But anyway, our final model tonight has skittered his way onto the stage and into our hearts. It's the Geonosian warrior Sun Fac. The winged semi-insectoid species native to the planet Geonosis is clad in the ritual warrior garb of his peoples and appears to be carrying his signature sonic blaster with him as he shows off his long, spindly insect legs.
Gross!
Ooh, that one's gotta hurt.
folks, that's going to do it for the 43rd annual Sly Moore Fashion and Skin Monster Review. From bugs to taut belly buttons to every ounce of a Toydarian's body, we've seen it all at the greatest fashion event of the galaxy. So until next time, we'll see you on the Hollow Runway.
On Geonosis, the space Jesus version of Obi-Wan is desperately trying to contact the Jedi Temple, but the signal isn't strong enough. He probably only has like one little bar, or maybe it's switched over to like 3G or something. You just can't get the signal all the way out there.
Plus, like, he has singular. Is that that can't
singular wireless?
That can't possibly still exist.
It might. I think it disappeared but came back. One of those happened. No, I'm thinking of US Cellular.
Maybe he's got Alltel. Maybe he's using Boost Mobile. That's still around.
I think that's a big one still.
I think
so.
Hey,
yo, dog, where you at? That's Boost Mobile.
Is it?
I think that's their commercial.
They have Seamus commercials, I think.
No.
I think they do.
Huh.
That might be Cricket Wireless.
Second Seamus to pop up in this podcast.
Cricket Wireless, which is actually a cell phone company for bugs. Ben Quadraneros uses it.
They use it a lot on Geonosis,
They do, yeah. Yeah, they're all bugs. Does Ben Quadraneros know these guys?
I probably raced there a time or two. There's a lot of big caverns to puff around
That's
through.
That's true. Well, that brings me to another point. Pod racing, is that really only a Tattooine thing?
No, it goes all over the Outer Rim.
It's like how baseball's in Japan.
Like how, there's a NASCAR track in Georgia, and then there's one in California. They're all around.
Yeah, there's one in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
They have NASCAR in Perth.
Well, they have like road tracks, which are the ones where you go right, too.
One of my favorite events every year, Talladega, Estonia. Talladega. As a kid, where was that on your list of things you liked to say out loud?
I mean, I like to say it. The problem was it was said a lot in my household.
Yeah, that's
my
true.
Mom
It's a really fun thing to say, though.
Obi-Wan instead decides to try and send a signal to Anakin, and he finds out the Padawan is now on Tattooine. And as much as Anakin likes to shoehorn how annoyed he is with Obi-Wan into every conversation, Obi-Wan also spends a great deal of time complaining loudly about Anakin to his robot. Although
Anakin does suck.
More worth it. Yes. More valid.
And this is pretty valid, too, because, again, Obi-Wan's going through all this stuff. He finds out, essentially, there's a plan to overthrow the galaxy. I'm sure he is frustrated that this kid can't even just sit still for a couple hours.
Well, Kenobi decides sending a message to Anakin will have to do. So he has R4 turn on his best Snapchat filters. He uses the one that makes you look like a kitty.
Yeah, it's pretty cute with little whiskers.
And he records his message. As he does this, we see R2-D2 back on the Nebulian ship. He's just fucking away at the ship, just furiously blasting it with his little prober. He's giving it really good to that spaceship when Kenobi's garbled message begins to come through. R2 watches the message from Obi-Wan. Sure, I'll give him that. But he also doesn't stop just fucking away. He keeps going the whole time.
He is quite literally laying pipe.
Meanwhile, Anakin has returned from his mission, and he's got a human body-shaped blanket in his arms.
Yeah, what was that mission?
To find his dead mother.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as the Lars crew and Padme come rushing out from the underground dome house, he passes Klieg, and I just couldn't help laugh to myself thinking, what if Klieg was just oblivious and was like, any luck? As he holds this body-shaped thing.
Oh, you bring back dinner?
We shift ahead a bit, and Padme brings Anakin a nice tall glass of blue and some space food, while the angsty teen just kind of pokes away at some machinery. He talks about how much simpler fixing things is than saving his mother from bandits, and eventually he just stops dicking around and looks at Padme and says, why'd she have to die? Why couldn't I save her? And Padme, seemingly confused because Anakin is an adult and not a 9-year-old anymore, tells him sometimes life happens, man. She tells him he's not all-powerful, so he can't expect to control everything.
Yeah, she has to deal with Jar Jar like every day. Things happen to people.
Which is equal to your mother dying in your arms.
It is some form of soul death.
Anakin cuts her off and says, I should be all-powerful, and one day you'll see I'm going to stop every bad thing from ever happening, and also I'll be able to stay up all night if I want to. I eat candy for breakfast. I'll be an adult.
All of this checks out. This is how a 10-year-old would act. Oh, this is the second movie. He's 20.
Padme tries her best to reason with the fussy Jedi, but, and you're not going to believe this, Brian, Anakin decides to blame Obi-Wan for everything. He says Obi-Wan is holding him back, and he throws his screwdriver into the other room.
From what? He doesn't really address that.
Everything.
He's holding me back from my mom living.
Now, up to this point, I had thought Padme was the adult in the room, but she instead turns to him in the midst of this tantrum and says, "What's wrong, Annie?" Maybe his mother just died in his arms. I wonder.
It's pretty obvious what's wrong. Now, his reaction to it is not sorrow, and you could argue maybe he would have, I don't know, found some free time in the past decade to maybe go do this before.
Nope. Got to wait until 10 minutes before her death. Anakin hesitates, but eventually he does tell Padme his little dark secret.
I killed them. I killed them all. They're dead. Every single one of them. And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too. They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them.
Now, one might expect Padme to be at least a little horrified at this.
Or out the door already.
But in truth, she just pauses a moment and then hugs him and says, "To be angry is to be human." I mean, who hasn't slaughtered an entire village of creatures when they got mad?
Yeah, excuse me, I've got to go change.
Anakin tells her he's a Jedi, and he should be better than this, and the two clutch each other for a moment as the screen wipes.
This made me furious.
Okay.
I just did. I already was annoyed that Padme deigned it necessary to kiss Anakin and express any affection when we've seen no chemistry. I mean, I guess you could argue this hasn't been built out either, because Padme throughout the series is still projected as strong. That's kind of how she's portrayed. But if I didn't know better, I'd think she had a history of being in abusive relationships and was manipulated really easily because of this. Because, I mean, it goes from 0 to 100 very quickly, of her being very cool on Anakin and simply being straight up repulsed by him, and then into friendship, and then into, I can't be without you.
This is like Star Wars as a whole, where as long as you don't think too hard about it, it's fine. Because you're supposed to be like, okay, well, yes, we knew he's Darth Vader eventually. We're seeing him turn evil. We know that. But from her perspective, you're supposed to be like, well, they just killed his mother. He was just evening the record. But that's not what this was.
No.
This is evil.
This was genocide.
Next, we're at Shmi's funeral, where Klieg is busy talking about how she was the best wife he ever bought. And Anakin takes his turn to mourn. He walks up to Shmi's grave and takes a big wad of his least favorite thing, sand, into his hand. He says he wasn't strong enough to save her, but he promises he won't ever fail again.
But I don't think you get a do-over on that one.
I think you pretty much lost at this point. But as he's giving his speech, R2 seemingly has finished robot blasting their ship, so he comes wheeling up to the group telling them he has a message from Obi-Wan. The group is now on their ship, and they listen to the Kenobi message, and as they do, he tells them to transmit the message to the Jedi Council, which is fortunate because a whole swath of Jedi and politicians are already there.
Are they always just kind of at the ready? Do they have like a dorm?
Like they all live together. This is the Chancellor's office, and it is a cool office.
Clean the bathroom, you never do.
Like Big Brother with all the Star Wars characters.
Oh, now you're talking a show I would absolutely watch.
Oh, yeah.
Someone should do an animated show like that.
Animation is easier than it's ever been.
Yeah.
So somebody out there on
they're
YouTube
doing that with some established properties. Like, I've never watched any of these, but I always chuckle at the idea of like superheroes that don't really get used. And then people are just using them in everyday life cartoons. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's good.
Like Hong Kong Phooey.
That's what you defaulted to?
He was a superhero, wasn't he?
I guess.
Technically.
He was a dog that jumped in a filing cabinet and turned into a better dog. Wait, this sounds awesome.
Yeah, you just described the best thing I've ever heard.
And he had a cat assistant.
That should have been the pitch in the room if it wasn't for whoever made that show up. All right, you've heard of Superman. This is a dog. And you've heard of phone booths. This is a filing cabinet. And you've heard of not being racist. This is racist.
Number one super guy. We talk Sheamus, Ninja Turtles.
Does he know Underdog?
I think they all get along. They have their own Big Brother spinoff.
Yeah, dog superheroes. Airbuds there.
Kenobi relays to both groups that he has tracked Jango Fett to the foundries of Geonosis, where a droid army is gathering. And you guys aren't going to believe this shit, but Newt Gunray, he was lying. He wasn't telling the truth.
What?
It turns out he's behind the assassination attempts on Padme.
Wait, what Padme thought like a long time ago or suspected is true?
Kenobi continues and tells everyone that various guilds have agreed to join the Separatists, and that they are forming the greatest droid army ever seen, and Count Dooku is behind it all. But before he can finish, he awkwardly says wait a couple of times, ignites his lightsaber, and his hologram image is slowly taken over by a droideka firing its cannons at him. Anakin looks distraught, but at the Jedi Temple, Yoda, as wise and powerful as Yoda is, says, "More going on here than we think, huh?"
Turns out there are a lot of problems under the hood.
Mace Windu agrees and tells Anakin to stay where he is. He says the biggest priority for him right now is protecting the senator, and he will deal with the motherfucking Obi-Wan Kenobi on motherfucking Geonosis. Anakin solemnly agrees but smirks a bit, because we all know he kind of hates Obi-Wan a little. But Padme says there's no way the council could arrive in time to save Kenobi, and they have to do something since they're much closer.
I really like this too. Padme's like, Anakin, you're not just going to let someone die. Yes, he is. Not only will he let someone die, he will go do it himself.
Well, she says, look, and then she pushes the one button that does everything on these ships, and it shows a cool infographic detailing to Anakin how much closer they are to Geonosis than Coruscant is.
I wish my car did this.
Just 1 parsec
like
away.
a little image pops up like on a 3D like planar map.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Who needs a Garmin when you can do that?
Yeah, all you need is an Elantra.
But Anakin kind of pouts and says, yeah, but he's probably dead or whatever. Padme calls him out on this.
I don't really want to bother.
Annie, are you just gonna sit here and let him die? He's your friend, your mentor.
He's like my father. But you heard Master Windu. He gave me strict orders to stay here.
He gave you strict orders to protect me. And I'm going to help Obi-Wan. If you plan to protect me, you'll just have to come along.
Hell yeah, Padme. You go help save Obi-Wan. My favorite part of this is Anakin. Earlier in the movie, he jumps right out of that, essentially, hotel room after those bugs try to attack Padme, completely abandoning her. No thought to it whatsoever. And now he's like, nah, I don't really feel like saving Obi-Wan. I'm supposed to stay here and protect you.
And I'd like to point out that I suppose it was an improvement going from, aren't you an angel? To, he's like my father. But right now, the annoying little boy is looking a little more positive to me for some reason.
He is wanting to have his cake and eat it, too, of complaining constantly about Obi-Wan being a terrible father figure, essentially. And then now, when he's in danger and he's looking for sympathy, claiming him as like his father.
Padme starts flipping switches and presumably pushing that one do-everything button to start the ship. And C-3PO tells R2-D2 he's not worried. He's just never really flown before. And anyway, I guess I just live with you guys now. Surely the dirt-poor water farmers don't need my help anymore. It just seems weird to me that they just take him.
Yeah, because you'd think if you had the option of either,
you'd leave him.
Yeah, I mean, and I hate to say it.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe like Beru and Owen are like, no, get him out of here.
This is part of the deal. You have to take him. We let you do your little full circle, like, grieve your mom thing. You take the robot.
We let you throw our screwdrivers. It's fine.
We let you kill 20% of the planet's population.
Well, the ship activates and flies off to Geonosis. And we're now back in the Chancellor's office, where Bail Organa is troubled by these events. He says the Commerce Guilds must be preparing for war at this point, and Palpatine states the obvious, saying, Count Dooku must have made a treaty with them, and this is the first I've ever heard of this. I certainly didn't orchestrate it from behind the scenes.
How unforeseen.
And then after that, we find one of those cow people, you know, the Gran. It's wearing a fur coat, and he just starts demon screaming stuff. It was terrifying and jarring at the same time.
And it's not a sound, like, the sound shouldn't come out of that.
No. It says they need the Clone Army now. The debate about it is over with. And by the way, I couldn't find a whole lot of information about this guy, so I think this is a good chance this is Ainley Team.
I had the same thought because he's a cow guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that there's anyone else it could be in Star Wars lore.
It's real hard to Google weird cow monster with Bail Organa in Attack of the Clones scene in Chancellor's office and get any actual information.
This has been an issue with, certainly with all of the Star Wars stuff, is Googling specifics like that, because there are probably 50 weird cow monster men. But not just Star Wars. We mentioned Boob Tube Boys earlier. And this has happened to me when we covered shows like Babylon 5, like Andromeda. Mm-hmm. I'm not getting a character name out of some of these people because there's just no finding it.
It's just how it works. And listeners out there, if you like what we're doing, or even if you don't like it, get in touch with me. If you know, I'd love to know, and I'll mention it in later episodes.
If there's any names you know that we're not mentioning, just tell us.
Well, anyway, Bail Organa does not react in abject horror to this monster like I would expect. Instead, he's mostly just annoyed with him, and he's like, no, this does not mean we need that clone army. The debate is not over.
He should have hit him with a fire extinguisher.
Did he just have one handy?
Like pull one off the wall and just spray him with it. Ah!
Or, I don't know. What do you do to cows?
Milk
Shake
them?
their bell?
Yeah, you pull on their
Please
udders.
don't milk this guy in the middle of the chancellor's
Milk
office.
anally. You know, Luke Skywalker's been known to milk a creature or two.
Drink it right from the teat if he needs to. Well, Mas Amedda, the big demon-headed assistant to the chancellor, he pipes up saying the Senate must vote the chancellor emergency powers. This will allow him to approve the creation of an army. Palpatine then goes, but who would be brave enough to suggest such a radical idea in the Senate? Mas Amedda continues, yeah, man, if only Senator Amidala were here. This is what Senator Amidala would do since she's so brave. Too bad no one else is like Senator Amidala. Certainly not a person who's acting in her stead. Indeed, too bad. Both Palpatine and Amedda look over at Jar Jar Binks, whose Gungan brain is working overtime trying to process this whole situation. One of my favorite parts of all of this is Mace Windu, Yoda, and Bail Organa, 3 characters that have shown intelligence, at least in the past, are all listening to this and not questioning it at all.
They love it. They're like one step closer. Oh, we figured out the Tyrannus Dooku thing. It must stop there. There must not be a higher level. I think we shouldn't overlook Palpatine's contributions to this scene, where he's basically like, oh, you know what? I'll do what's needed of me. If there's anything I love, it's democracy. Maybe in 5 years, though, me and my followers will say democracy's the problem.
We're now back on Geonosis, where Count Dooku is visiting a captured Obi-Wan Kenobi, and before he even gets all the way through the door, Kenobi calls Dooku a traitor. All 6'4" of Count Dooku comes waddling in with his cool cape. He says some of the most sarcastic lines in all of Star Wars. He goes, oh no, my friend, this is madness. A mistake, a terrible mistake. They've gone too far. It's madness. It's crazy. I'll fix it. It's so goofy.
I laughed out loud. And this has got to be a thing where the lines were written that way. They're like, you need to say all of this.
Because if any actor out there can say stupid bullshit well, it's Christopher Lee, because he's been in so many bad movies.
Yeah.
But this is
and he
so
handles
absurd.
them so well. But here he's asked to say too many lines. He can pull off gravitas out of almost anything, but if you give him like 4 paragraphs to read in 20 seconds.
Well, Obi-Wan is kind of mean to Dooku here, tells him to make the bug set him free because he has work to do. Dooku tells the Jedi it's a pity their paths have never crossed before this, because Qui-Gon always spoke very highly of him. Because you see, just like how Kenobi was Qui-Gon's Padawan, Qui-Gon was Count Dooku's Padawan. Now, this is a good time to go over Dooku's history and how he came to be the leader of the Separatists, so we'll talk about this for a minute. He was actually born in the wealthy planet Sereno to the planet's ruler Count Gora. As a young child, he began to show force sensitivity, which scared and aggravated Dooku's father, as he considered force sensitives to be freaks. Gora contacted the Jedi Order and demanded they come take his son away, but before they could even get there, he took his now child Dooku, stripped him nude, threw him out into the outskirts of the city, and just left him there. Fortunately for him, someone found him. Eventually, he did make his way to the Jedi Temple, of course. As a kid, Dooku was snobby in the sense that he was very authoritarian, and he stuck to the rigid set of rules in place, but he was also really good at everything. He was just talented at whatever they had him do. He didn't have many friends, but he did get along with a fellow youngling named Sifo Dyas, which is a name you've heard before.
Yes.
Eventually, Dooku learned of his family and his father dismissing him, and he was even verbally and physically assaulted by his dad when he learned out that's who it was. He was then picked by Master Yoda to be his Padawan. We don't know that yet in the movie. That's actually a big reveal later, but it's a podcast about a movie. Deal with it.
Yeah. Hey, we'll get there.
All the while, Dooku has been fascinated with the concept of the Sith. And remember, at this point, the Sith have been gone for 1,000 years. Yeah. So this was just ancient history.
The Sith are a myth, effectively. Like, people are going to be talking about it like a thing of the... You know, it's like how now people kind of obsess over, like, orders from 1,000 years
Knights
ago.
Templar and stuff like that. Yeah.
And then their wife's like, honey, the kids need help with their homework. I'm like, not now. I'm researching stuff that's true.
I had a hard day at the toilet factory. Well, Dooku thought the Jedi Order ignoring this concept of the Sith was just an egregious error, and he began to train himself in a more duel-oriented form of lightsaber combat, which we haven't talked about in a while. He eventually became what's called the Master of Makashi, Form 2,
This all adds up. He's kind of like a rich kid who would be into like rugby and lacrosse and fencing.
And be really good at it because he's had every opportunity to be good at it.
He's so trained in everything, even though he's just a cold guy.
Mm-hmm. Well, Makashi was regarded as antique at the time and very much unnecessary. A lot of Jedis learned all the forms.
It's fucking hipster lightsaber fighting.
That's exactly what it is. Because, like I said, there hadn't been a Sith in 1,000 years. So most of the enemies the Jedi would encounter wouldn't be fighting with a lightsaber or even a melee weapon. It'd be a blaster. So a lot of Jedis trained to fight against that. Because
Makes
why would you?
sense.
They would spar, they would duel, but it was just more of a fun practice thing.
You really only need the saber if you're going... It's like an honor thing, If you're fighting someone of that caliber, that's the kind of fight you have. Otherwise, yeah, it's an alligator man with a gun. You handle it like you would any alligator man with a gun.
As you often do in your day-to-day life.
God, it's getting to be... I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say what everyone in America's been afraid to say. These alligator men are out of control.
You're taking some big steps in the podcast. Let me ask this, though. What if the alligator man doesn't have a gun and instead he has a crawdad and a Cajun accent? How do you handle that?
Answer me this. Does he have enough Zatarans in that bowl for two? In his pot that he's carrying around, presumably.
Oh, baby, he's got a lot of red beans and rice, I'll tell you that.
Okay, well, I think I'll become friends with him. Maybe fight some turtles that have mutated.
Well, Makashi as a style tends to involve quick, precise strikes and elegance, and it's kind of comparable to fencing in modern-day fighting, if you will. One neat note is that Dooku actually developed his own lightsaber hilt, which is the lightsaber we see here. It's curved.
I bet it's fucking monogrammed, isn't it?
It is very expensive and shiny, yeah, for sure. This basically changed the angle of his blade, so when he would duel, it would just fuck with people because it was just different.
Okay, now this brings to mind like a pitcher changing arm slots.
Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty good. Maybe it's
this
one you've
is
never
all
seen
rooted
before.
in athletic competition.
Yeah. Well, remember, these are movies, of course, and they've basically taken the concepts that fight coordinators, sword fighters have created for the characters and evolved them into the story.
I don't know why. And I think you probably picked up on this the last time we were talking about this, which I think might have been in our coverage of the Obi-Wan series on BoobTube Boys, which anyone listening should check out because you're obviously a Star Wars fan. But
what if they aren't?
What if
they're like, I love their voices so much, I'm going to listen to this even though I hate Star Wars.
Man, I wish they were talking about anything else, like the Greatest Housewives of Baton Rouge.
Yeah, Great Housewives
One of them dates
Sereno.
Leatherhead because it's in Louisiana.
Yeah. I interrupted you. You had a point.
I, for some reason, am really drawn to how thought out all of that is. Like everyone having their own technique and reasons for learning that technique.
Well, and like, I don't like MMA. I don't like all these fighting things. None of that interests me. But in Star Wars, it does because of the depth. Because of all that.
And because it's just simulating a real thing. You can have that depth with that. It's why I like pro wrestling. It's not MMA. I'm not watching anyone actually try to murder anyone. I'm watching people have a good time acting like they're going to murder someone and implementing approximations of fight styles, which is what this lightsaber thing is.
Did you see the recent stuff that came out of AEW where CM Punk impaled someone with a lightsaber?
Yeah, it's really,
Big deal.
It's fucked up. I've heard that Count Dooku is not pleased about it, and he might be his next challenger.
At WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Or whatever the AEW equivalent is.
Well, it's actually a joint promotion cross between, because AEW's worked with New Japan in the past and with Impact, and now they're going to be working with Space.
Eventually, Count Dooku rose to the level of Jedi Master. He had a seat on the council. He was one of the top guys. He took on a couple.
Was he elected?
I don't think you're elected. I think it's more like Yoda or whoever's in the lead.
You kind of rise to that point. Yeah. Okay.
Because like they offer it, and sometimes people decline, like Qui-Gon.
Yeah, and Dooku eventually leaves.
Which is unheard of, by the way.
When you get to that, I'm really interested. I have some questions.
Sure. He had a couple of Padawans throughout his career, notably, of course, Qui-Gon Jinn. And there were many events in his life that actually led up to him questioning the Jedi Order and eventually leaving it. One of them was that Sifo-Dyas had a prophetic dream where there was going to be like a solar storm that hit a planet and killed a bunch of people. And so Dooku and Dyas told all the Jedi Masters about it. And they're like, well, prophecies don't come true. We don't care. It's no big deal. They went behind the Jedi Council's back and told the planet. The leader of the planet then was more concerned about losing productivity of the workers.
Sounds
like
realistic.
Elon Musk. And
what the United States did during COVID.
Bingo. So anyway, essentially, they didn't do anything about it. A solar flare happens, wipes out millions of people. And Dooku, this kind of disenchanted him a bit because of it. It's one of the many steps that led him to this point.
This is one of the things I really like about this character, and I wish more of it was kind of on screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the disappointing part, because if you're just watching these movies, the 2 movies he's in, it's just like, whatever. He's
It's
just an old guy
another old evil bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand that he probably has one of the more justifiable and interesting stories to get to this point. I'd argue this has a lot more depth than, like, someone killed my family member, now I'm evil. He sees systematic corruption that's harming people.
The proverbial straw that did break the camel's back actually occurred during the events of the Phantom Menace. Qui-Gon, of course, warned the Jedi Council about the return of the Sith, and they just ignored it. They're like, no way, the Sith haven't been here for 1,000 years. Eventually, this ends in Jin's death, which deeply hurt Dooku. That was his Padawan. They were very close.
Well, and you see it even 10 years later with Dooku doing all he's doing. The Jedi are still kind of like, how much of a threat really are the Sith?
Shortly after that, he actually renounced the Order, his ways. He found his way back to Sereno, where his brother had now ascended to the throne and was Count whatever his brother's name. So Dooku killed him, took back his title, his lands, his money, and basically, like, the Jedi Order still had a good relationship with him, and he would come and talk to them at times and could get in the library, the archives, bump uglies with Jocasta-Nu, that sort of thing. So he was still on good terms with him, but he was very disenchanted doing his own thing. And eventually, Darth Sidious approached him, recruited him into the Sith Order because of all the corruption in the Republic. That's how he got Dooku, is he said, the Republic's done. It cannot be saved. Here's my plan. We're going to wipe everything out and start over. Dooku's the kind of guy who sees that and sees that you have to do bad things as a means to an end to make things better.
Yeah.
So that's why, in fact, he never gets the Sith eyes. He's not truly Sith evil. Like, Palpatine will say he's doing things for the betterment of everyone. He's just doing it for his own power. Dooku really is, in his mind,
he really does
it.
believe that, because he's seen, and he makes the classic mistake of, I see a lot of bad going on as a result of the Jedi. I will just entirely switch my affiliation to another flawed group.
I'll get my card.
I'll get my card in the other group. It's like, no, dude, like, they're killing people too. More, in fact.
And more points to he'll do whatever it takes is Sifo Dyas is still a member of the Jedi Council at this time. Dooku convinces him to start this clone army thing because that's all part of the big plan. He then has Sifo Dyas killed because this can't be revealed.
We see it play out everywhere when Detective Obi-Wan is going around everywhere. Everybody, Sifo Dyas, and, that doesn't necessarily lead right back to Tyrannus/Dooku.
Mm-hmm. Back on set here, Dooku mentions Qui-Gon to Obi-Wan, saying, basically, I could use his help right now. I'm really sad he's gone. Obi-Wan gets mad about this and says Qui-Gon would never join you. But Dooku reveals there's more than meets the eye here. The truth of the matter is the Republic is now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith. Obi-Wan's like, no way, man. The Jedi would know if that's the case. But Dooku says the dark side has clouded their vision, and even reveals the name of this Dark Lord, which we've heard the Separatists talk about. The Jedi haven't heard it yet. Darth Sidious.
I think this scene, albeit hilarious because of that opening line with Dooku and the way it ends.
Yeah.
But this particular part lends credence to what we're saying.
100%.
I think, because Dooku is totally willing to just tell all of this information to Obi-Wan because he thinks, hey, Obi-Wan's a good guy too. And Dooku believes he himself is doing the right thing.
And Dooku believes if Obi-Wan joins him, he can overthrow Palpatine.
Yeah.
And he can now do it his way. And that's genuinely in canon. That is his thought process. Obi-Wan is great. He was trained by Qui-Gon. That's what I need to become the guy who does
really,
this.
Really love all of that. I really think that's so much more interesting than what time the movie gives it.
Mm-hmm.
You could have made this movie 20% more adult, if that makes sense, in its themes, and still appeal to all the kids you want.
Obi-Wan simply can't believe all of this. He thinks Dooku's lying to him. The Count continues. He says even Newt Gunray, who's always doing legal things, was once in league with this Darth Sidious, but he was betrayed by him 10 years ago. Gunray came to Dooku for help, told him everything. Now Dooku is fighting against this evil. So he presents himself as a good guy, which, again, that's what he believes. He makes one last effort at recruiting Obi-Wan, saying, join me, we'll destroy the Sith. But Obi-Wan says, I'll never join you. Dooku turns to leave, but before he does, turns around and he's like, you know how I said I'd get you freed? Nope. It's going to be tough.
Also
hard.
Really funny. He doesn't get what he wants, and Dooku's just like, you know what? Never mind. You can just hang there forever.
Whatever, bitch.
That's his attitude.
Wait. Whatever, bitch.
These nuts.
In the Galactic Senate, for some reason, they've decided to let Jar Jar Binks speak for a while.
That's a problem.
As Mace Windu approaches Yoda, we hear the Gungan saying he proposes the Senate immediately give the Chancellor emergency powers so that he can form the Grand Army of the Republic. I'll be honest, even with that ham-fisted performance of Palpatine and Mas Amedda from earlier, I was not sure that Jar Jar was even smart enough to figure out what they were trying to hint at. And so I kind of imagine like Palpatine asks him like, hey buddy, is there anything you're thinking about doing in the Senate session today? And Jar Jar's just like, nope.
Misa play with Legos.
So Palpatine has to like keep gently suggesting like, you know, I'm still looking for somebody who's brave enough to...
Kind of somebody to step up a little here.
And Jar Jar's just like, And finally, like smoking a cigarette 2 hours later, Palpatine's like, someone like you should suggest I get emergency powers.
All right, I'm going to write down what I need you to do. Can you read?
Well, once the Gungan finishes his declaration, we get to see a whole bunch of monsters clapping and shouting, and there's chanting, Palpatine, Palpatine. That's a hard name to chant, by the way.
It is, and they all synced up pretty quickly, albeit it seems like a weird percentage of them are participating in the chant for the volume of the chant. Maybe it's just the size of the room.
The man himself stands up and he says, it's with great reluctance that I agree to this calling. I love democracy, and I love the Republic. Once this conflict is over, I will totally step down and relinquish this unchecked power you guys just gave me. He declares he will create this big army to counter the Separatists, so let's fucking go! I really wish he would have gotten psyched up.
That would have been awesome. And like again, everybody's like, yeah, this guy's the real deal.
Yoda and Mace are basically like, yeah, whatever, this is what it is. Can't be that bad, right? Mace says he'll take what remaining Jedi they have and go to Geonosis, while Yoda kind of hints that he's going to go check out them cloners on Camino. He'll check and see if this army of, just one guy, but a lot, see if it's any good.
Right.
Well, let's go ahead and take a quick break here, refresh our purple, come back, talk about Geonosis a lot.
I've tried death sticks.
I've tried death sticks.
I've tried death sticks.
I've tried death sticks. In my travels throughout the galaxy, I've seen many terrible things. Assassination attempts, the slaughter of an entire village of natives, and everyone I've ever known and loved being killed. But the worst thing to face our galaxy today is death sticks. The Galactic Center for Being a Total Square estimates that over 70% of younglings have been offered death sticks at least once in their lives. And sure, they make you seem really cool, but almost everyone who tries them becomes hooked, and suddenly, their lives are turned upside down. But don't just listen to me. Listen to those who've had their lives irreversibly changed by death sticks. Cyborgs, droids, Tusken Raiders, even a former Chancellor.
Back at university, that is UC Riverside, well, I digress, University of Coruscant Riverside, that is, I was studying the Bard in my free time when my classmate, the voluptuous and radiant Venusia Orion, of House Orion, told me of a grand new oral delight known as More Hare, what you, the layman, might know as death sticks, and after one puff I knew something was amiss. I hollow-called my mother right away to apologize. With my sordid past behind me, I was able to get Venusia Orion expelled from university forever and begin my ascent to the floating throne.
Before I tried death sticks, I had a healthy set of lungs contained within my impenetrable cyborg body. Now I can barely get up the energy to crush them, nonetheless make them suffer.
Oh, I got hooked on death sticks when I was a little kid. Shit, it's been really bad. I had to sell my family's only cycler rifle, and my dad won't talk to me anymore. I'm up to like 3-4 cylinders a day.
When I was a young lad looking for work on Nal Hutta, a slithmonger gave me a hit off a death stick, and let me tell you,
You ain't experienced bliss until you've had tantric Twi'lek sex while blitzed out of your mind.
Dexter?
Yeah?
Dexter, I'm sorry. If we could just stop for a moment. We're trying to be a bit more discouraging with this advertisement.
Oh, I understand.
All right, roll.
Death sticks. Yeah, death sticks. Well, kids, you shouldn't start on the death sticks, at least until you get to legal age, but what even is legal these days? I remember when I dropped out of school, I started hanging out with this gang of Dougs called the Scooter Boys. Anyway, they had an initiation rite where you had to kidnap a orderlin's baby and squeeze the life out of it right in front of its mother.
Dexter, if you could pull your pants up for me. Dexter, you have to remember they're bad.
Oh, yeah, right. That one's on me, my bad. Kids, what you got to remember is death sticks ain't all fun in the sun. I mean, sure, they make sex better and make music and hollow stories infinitely more emotional and satisfying, but they also take away the sad thoughts. And, I mean, let's face it, sometimes life ain't worth living, so you gots to get a pick-me-up every now and then.
Dexter?
And, what?
Dexter, we're good.
You see, anyone can be impacted by death sticks. I implore you to help me eliminate this scourge by saying, "It's over, death sticks! I have the high ground!" And maybe, just maybe, we can say death sticks are in a galaxy far, far away from this one.
By this point, Padme and Anakin have arrived on Geonosis, so they fly into some steam columns to try and sneak in and save Obi-Wan. As Padme puts her sweater on, she tells Anakin, no matter what, don't fuck this up. Follow my lead. I'm a goddamn adult, literally and figuratively here. I'm a senator. I will try and resolve this diplomatically.
Do you think this is a Jan and Michael Scott situation?
Oh, yes. Now that you've said that,
like
wow.
At the beginning, Padme's got her shit together, but she did go through some trauma, so she's vulnerable.
So, and he was there for her
at the right time or
so
wrong
then
time.
She gets into it, but then goes off the rails later.
Yeah, and chooses to die. I don't think Jan did that.
Well, I don't know. We never saw the end of Jan's story.
True. For all we know, she just chose to break her own heart.
As the two leave the ship, R2-D2 beeps a whole bunch, and C-3PO searches all of his 7 million forms of communication to think of the meanest thing he can call R2, and he settles on obtuse.
Yeah, he got him good. You never know how harmful that is for droids to hear.
It could be. I don't know. His dome is more concave, am I right?
In all seriousness, R2 and C-3PO would be very valuable to have.
Oh, absolutely. R2 can do anything.
Anything. C-3PO, too.
Smart.
He does stuff.
Well, smart's not the word I'd go for. Full of knowledge.
He's full of information.
Mm-hmm. And he can talk to a whole bunch of people.
He'd probably kill it on, like, Jeopardy. Droid Jeopardy.
What is? And then he says the thing.
Speaking of future ads we could do.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Like
Droid Jeopardy.
Any game show.
He says, if they needed our help, my obtuse little friend, then they would have asked for it. The two robot lovers just continue to argue until R2 decides the best thing to do is get the fuck away from C-3PO. But, being C-3PO, he decides to follow him, and the two just go chasing off after Anakin and Padme.
That's a lot of this movie is someone leaves in ill-advised fashion, and then a chase ensues.
What follows next is a patented George Lucas action sequence where nothing really happens, but it's a lot of flashy CGI. And I believe I brought this up in Attack of the Clones Part 1, but pretty much this whole sequence was added in post-production. They had some reshoots, which they actually did in a day, by the way.
Wow.
All the scenes with Anakin running on the conveyor belt and Padme as well.
I guess
shot in 4 hours.
If Hayden doesn't have to talk a lot,
then it works out okay.
Yeah.
He says some good one-liners here. Lucas at the time felt that the movie needed some action. It had slowed down to this point, and he's right. I don't know that he achieves the goal he was going for, but I get where he was. As a director, I can sit down and say, like, that is a good point, George Lucas.
Absolutely. You need ebbs and flows. Now, where the flow leads to, like a cesspool, might, that's not good.
Yeah, I mean, this is possibly the worst part of the movie.
You know what else this comes across like as another, here's one for the kids, like, oh man, we just had that genocide. Like, kids just heard that they can die, maybe for the first time. in our movie. Let's have some people kind of dance around on a printing press or something.
I don't know. Maybe that worked.
Yeah.
Maybe kids are totally fine with
it does
this.
redirect your focus a little bit, I will say that.
And for us who understand that this is kind of stupid, it does make us angry.
Yeah.
So we go from like horrified to angry.
To a different kind of horrified.
So it works out.
This one is compared to the cruiser chase scene earlier in the movie. This one has that mousetrap feel to it a little bit, I guess. Like, what little contraption might one of our heroes fall in? No, I tried. It's not good.
It was a valiant effort. I'll give you that. Well, the basic gist of all of this is Anakin, Padme, R2, and C-3PO go through the foundry where the battle droids are being made, and that's it. That's the gist of it.
Now, is there anything awesome?
Well, at one point, C-3PO says, "Oh my goodness, shut me down. Machines making machines. How perverse." Good C-3PO line.
I loved it. And, okay, here's my take on this as the foremost C-3PO expert. I'm really not. I just feel...
I think we can crown
I feel
you
a bit of a kinship. I think he is a bit revolted at the process at first of robots making robots, but as he's going through this thought out loud, he adds the how perverse at the end to cover the fact that he's a little turned on.
Okay, so you think it was a curve.
Yeah.
And then at the end he's like, oh my, but then better cover my bases here.
Yeah, at this point, they could make him the perfect wife. Or husband, or bought wife. What is that?
All right, let's do this. Now, obviously, you and I are open to gender being whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
We don't need to genderize robots.
No.
But if we were, these are both male robots who are a gay couple.
For sure.
And R2 is the top.
Absolutely.
C-3PO is the bottom, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's canon as far as I'm concerned. I think that's one of the great charms is that C-3PO and R2 are absolutely a couple.
Oh, yeah. They are lovers.
Yeah.
Like R2 fools around on the side occasionally.
Also, maybe the most successful relationship in all of Star Wars.
Last 9 movies?
Yeah.
It's great.
And their bickering is cute. It's not caustic. There are no genocides committed.
You know what? We find out in the last movie that we've lost C-3PO forever, but then R2 has got to back up. We're good. He keeps C-3PO inside of him.
Yeah.
Because it's his lover, his
You
friend.
know, when I hated that when I saw that movie, but now that I'm thinking of it as a great love story,
it's better.
It is better.
Okay. The only other real thing of note here is C-3PO's head gets put on a battle droid, while a battle droid head gets put on his body. Anakin loses his lightsaber, to which he quips, "Not again. Obi-Wan is gonna kill me."
If he's mad about losing a lightsaber, just imagine how mad he's going to be later.
Well, eventually the 2 humans are captured by Jango Fett, and they're given to Count Dooku.
Now, what about Jango's cool gremlin army?
The Geonosians?
Yeah.
They're pretty cool. They've got those guns that shoot like sound at people. They go...
Yeah, and that's kind of what that is, like sound waves that reverberate. Is that what that's supposed to be?
I believe so. And they are like a warring species. So that's why we find out Poggle and the Geonosians created the Death Star. They make weapons. They are a very violent, mean-spirited species. But don't worry, Brian. They get wiped off of the Earth. They get wiped off of space.
The Geonosis.
Later on in the series.
It makes me wonder, though, to get those sound wave weapons, if they had to visit Candy's musical shop and buy one of their instruments with so many DK coins.
Well, first you have to get to Funky's flight shop and fly there.
Yeah.
It's a whole
Who's your
process.
favorite side Donkey Kong?
Oh, Funky Kong.
Yeah, Funky
Hands
rules.
down.
He's so cool.
He's got that A shirt and like a bandana on his head like me right now.
Yeah.
Keep my hair out of my face.
I bought a few of those
I like
recently.
'em.
I'm very happy with that purchase.
You know, at one point I would have been like, oh, if people saw me in this, they'd be like, look at that weirdo. I don't care. Functionally, it keeps my hair out of my face. It's cool. I like it.
I'm pretty
cool as in
into
not hot.
how weird I can look at times now.
Yeah.
One thing about having long hair in your 30s is it signals 2 things. I'm
You're cool.
super virile and cool, you know, because I still have all of these luxurious locks. And 2, I'm a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
So, like, I do a lot of my shopping really early on Sunday mornings.
That's a good time to do it.
Yeah, the stores are pretty empty. We're in Missouri, so everyone's at church. Yeah. I will pretty intentionally wear, like, a very haphazard combination of clothes and just have my hair however it was when I woke up. It's pretty cool. No one comes near me.
Well, I'm curious because people tend to actively avoid me because in addition to being the weird with the long hair, I'm also huge.
Yeah.
So that scares some people away. I wonder how that compares to you.
Yeah, people are very okay. Another thing I've noticed right now, I'm relatively clean shaven. A lot less frightening to people when I'm clean shaven.
Interesting. Okay. Huh.
But if I'm long hair and like bushy beard, I do think that there's a certain amount of mothers kind of herd their children away.
Okay.
From where I am.
And honestly, they should.
Yeah. I mean, unless those kids want to start hearing about Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Or smoke a death stick or two.
Yeah. Get them started early. Stunt that growth.
Well, there is a deleted scene here where Padme and Anakin are brought before Count Dooku, Jango, and Poggle the Lesser. Padme requests for the release of her, Anakin, and Obi-Wan, and Dooku tells her if Naboo were to join the Separatists, then maybe they could work a little something out, because honestly, the Republic is broken. It can't be fixed. He says they have to start over, but she refuses. She says, no way am I giving up on something I've worked my whole life for here. No human way.
But at the end of the scene, she says, but maybe you can have the Gungans.
Well, they lead him away, of course, at this point. Dooku actually says, I've done everything I can do for you.
It's just not true. He could release them.
This was really, as far as deleted scenes go, not necessary, but another one of those that humanizes Dooku a little bit. From his standpoint, it's disappointing it's gone. But in the flow of a movie, it's whatever.
You know, I kind of find, and again, I know the demographic and the fact that, and certainly now with Disney owning everything, it's way different. But I think a lot of those character moments, I don't know, maybe 20% more character moments and 20% less Battle of Geonosis.
And then you'll like this one, Brian. There's another deleted scene. It has a fake trial where Anakin and Padme are on trial.
Who's the lawyers in this trial?
Well, I can tell you the judge is Poggle the Lesser.
How did he get that job?
He went through
law school. A lot of law school.
Well, he clicks and whistles and makes this weird Geonosian noises, sentences them to death.
Wow.
And the best part of it is Newt Gunray's here at the courtroom, and he fist pumps and just hell yeah! Like he's psyched.
I think it's like a fin pump.
What do you call a frog leg?
A frog leg, you eat them.
But
they do seem like they should
webbing,
have. Yeah, because they have the webbing and they're really powerful leg.
Because they can jump.
Yeah.
I'll bet Newt Gunray can fucking jump.
I bet he's got some thighs on him.
He can lift that Pope hat right off the ground. Well, back to the actual movie. We now find ourselves in the Geonosis arena. Padme and Anakin are being prepared to send out to death via monster. Anakin tells Padme, don't be afraid. And she says, I'm not afraid to die. After all, I've been dying a little inside every day since you came back.
Oh my God.
Anakin is as confused as the audience is at this point. And he goes like, what do you mean? Padme commits to the heel turn at this point.
Yep.
And she just says, I love you. And again, he's taken aback by all
Might
of
as
this.
well hit Yoda in the back with a steel chair, as heelish as this is.
Anakin takes a moment to collect himself and then basically says, well, what about all that stuff you said earlier about having to live a lie?
He can't even fucking take this.
No, he has to argue against it.
It's unbelievable. He's getting everything he ever wanted.
He says it would destroy our lives. What about that? And Padme reveals her hand here and she says, I think our lives are about to be destroyed anyway. So I personally take this as one of those, like you're on an airplane.
The plane's going down.
Crashing. You know you won't survive. So you just turn to the person next to you like, hey, want to fuck?
And this is a series of somewhat excusable trauma romance instances between the two. There's going to come a time, though, and it's going to be in this movie, where there's a point of no return.
Mm-hmm. Padme goes even further. She says, I truly, deeply love you, and I want you to know that before I die.
Despite the fact that my actions have not suggested such.
The two share a passionate kiss as they're being led out to the arena full of screaming Geonosian bug people. They do see a familiar face, however, as Obi-Wan is chained up to a column in the middle of the arena, where the bugs also chain up Padme and Anakin. It's a reunion between Padawan and Master here, and the two are just as excited to see one another as ever.
I was beginning to wonder if you'd got my message.
I retransmitted it just as you had requested, Master. Then we decided to come and rescue you.
Good job.
Like Obi-Wan's the chains rattling casually in the background.
The noises of the bugs.
Yeah. This movie is set up kind of a mystery from the outset of Obi-Wan trying to figure out what's going on. He's getting the mystery of these clones. Eventually it leads him to Geonosis and the mystery of Tyrannus/Dooku. It's all very cloak and dagger stuff to the point where people have changed their names. But a senator and two Jedi are about to be murdered in public. Now, wouldn't this be just an inciting incident that starts a full fucking war? Everyone sees what's going on.
Yes, but also, I mean, that's what Sidious wants anyway.
Yeah.
So I guess from his perspective, it's like, okay, go with it. And therefore, Dooku's in on it. He knows,
I guess
okay.
that was the thing that was confusing to me is like,
but that is bizarre.
I feel like there should have been a scene before where almost like Sidious and Dooku were talking or something, and Sidious is like, it's time.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to go ahead and do it. We got to know the consequences after this. But it's not treated as that sort of a thing.
Right.
It's like almost a separate thing. Like, we've captured these good guys.
Are you suggesting George Lucas didn't really think all this out?
You know, I hate to say it, but yeah.
On a balcony, we get an assembly of cool weirdos. We have Count Dooku, Newt Gunray, Rune, Jango and Boba Fett, Poggle the Lesser. They all arrive to watch the executions. And Poggle tells the screaming crowd to pipe down, settle down, shut up. Using the clicks and whistles of his bug people language, he announces, "Let the executions begin." The whole place has like a monster truck rally kind of vibe to it, but with bugs, of course. So I asked you, Brian, instead of popcorn and cotton candy, when it's soda, what do you think the vendors are selling here?
Yeah, like pebbles and guts.
I think there's probably like Geonosis Execution 2002 hats.
Oh, they would have. They would definitely
like
have merch. Yeah, and maybe merch for your favorite bug man.
Like, I've got a Nexu shirt or whatever.
Yeah, like, I'm really into Stone Cold Green Austin.
I love Sun Fac. That's an actual Geonosian.
I hate how they mark up all the Dooku merch just because he's like their #1 seller.
Yeah.
It's kind of fucked up.
But I got to get me one of them big foam fingers.
They sell out every time.
It says #1 on it.
Yeah, only has 4 fingers.
How are they going to execute the Jedi and Padme, you might ask?
Well, it's pretty easy. You've got them tied up to the post. You can just do anything and it's over.
Shoot them with your sound guns, poke them with spears. Easy. Nope. We find out that they're going to release 3 big mean monsters from their caves. And in order of appearance, we have the Reek. It's a big dinosaur rhinoceros thing. It's got a horn on its head, 1 horn on each cheek. And they were actually herbivores, but if starved enough, could become carnivorous and ravenous, which is what's happening here. They starve them to have them kill.
So they're classy all around.
Yeah, pretty much. We also have the Acklay. That's a big crustacean/reptilian mix. It's got big pointy legs, a hard carapace, and they are natural carnivorous predators. Finally, we have the Nexu. That's a big cat, and it's got spines across its back and like a whip tail. All pretty cool monsters.
Yeah, I take back the thing I said where they should have just killed him really quickly. This is
make
better.
A spectacle.
It's a real James Bond villain leaves the room while the laser hasn't reached James Bond yet.
While you're in the arena killing James Bond.
Yeah, with a bunch of bugmen.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Now sign this, autograph it so I can sell it later. As the monsters are led to the middle of the arena and our heroes, Anakin gives our obligatory, "I've got a bad feeling about this." It's in all the movies. Here it is.
It's really funny here.
Like, of course you do.
They've already announced they're executing you. It's not like you're getting a hunch.
You can see both Padme and Obi-Wan roll their eyes. Obi-Wan and Anakin spitball plan while Padme, who has smuggled some sort of lockpick, she releases her chains and climbs the tall post that she was chained to. And now we have some big-time action scenes coming up. I'll summarize them as I often do, for the most part. Basically, the Nexu goes after Padme, who by now is on top of the big pole, and it does manage to leap up and scratch her across the back, which at the same time removes just the midriff of her clothes. And this caused nerd boners felt throughout the galaxy, of course. And I mean that, by the way, because I play a game called Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. It's a mobile game. When they released Padme a couple of years ago, there were legit tons of complaints that the character model they used was this costume, the white costume, but together, not with the midriff exposed.
Do you think
made people mad?
Do you think that's because they were gonna?
Oh, I'm certain they were. She has an ability called Hero with No Fear, and she can't be affected by the debuff called Fear.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's accompanied by Hero with no midriff on her clothes.
Yes.
Which I guess is the adaptable option here. It is funny how fashionable this damage to her wardrobe looks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it looks pretty intentional. Funnier than that is Newt Gunray like getting really hyped up when this happens.
He cackles and fist pumps. It's great.
And
I
it's
love
not
because
he's turned on. He wants her dead.
No, he does want her dead. Do you think if given the opportunity to fool around with her?
No, she's not a fish.
Okay, good point.
She's not Rune.
Anyway, the Acklay goes after Obi-Wan, who makes it use its powerful claws to snap his chains and set him loose, albeit he's still handcuffed. The Reek charges at Anakin, who then mounts it like a horse, and he uses the chains to control it like they're reins, although he does eventually fall off of it and get dragged around for a while. Padme swings around on the pole she's on and kicks the Nexu, which then causes Newt Gunray to lament, "She can't do that! Shoot her! Or something!"
He's so mad that she's violated the rules?
The rules of execution. Obi-Wan eventually gets a spear from a random Geonosian and fights with the Acklay, while Anakin uses the Force to tame the Reek and once again ride it like some sort of mean bull. He uses the Reek to attack and kill the Nexu, saving Padme, who then joins Anakin in riding the Reek. The two then go and get Obi-Wan, who also joins and jumps on top of the horsey. Newt Gunray's fucking livid. He's so mad. He demands that Jango go and finish Padme off, but Dooku says, "Patience, Viceroy, please, patience. The senator will die." And just then, several droideka come rolling out of the cave and pop up. They aim their weapons at our heroes. This does seem like the end for them, but we see Mace Windu walking up behind Count Dooku and the rest of the villains. He ignites his lightsaber and holds it to Jango's neck. He tells the former Jedi Master Dooku that this party's over. It's a good one-liner.
Yeah.
I like it. Also in that game, that's one of Mace Windu's abilities.
I wish he had more. It's not just because it's Samuel L. Jackson.
Right.
I wish there were just more actors capable of delivering good one-liners, delivering them.
Right.
Because Hayden Christensen's not that guy.
And the way that Lucas films this with only one actor on set at a time and everything, its dialogue is disjointed and weird.
There is something off about a lot of the Battle of Geonosis and when the characters are interacting.
At Windows quip, the sound of 100 lightsabers ignite and sprout up all over the arena as the bulk of the Jedi forces appear, ready to defend Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme. Dooku tells his old friend that he's impossibly outnumbered, and his move was brave, but foolish. Mace quips, "Here, I don't think so." But the marching sound of battle droids is heard behind him, and we see for the first time in Star Wars the B-2 battle droid, which is a stronger, more improved version of the standard, Roger, B-1 battle droid.
This one just has to say Roger.
Just once. And actually their voices are like, they're kind of deeper. The B-2 droids do come equipped with wrist guns, and as players of the Battlefront video games might know, wrist rockets! There's a quote from one of the games where the clones go, "Watch those wrist rockets!" And it's become like an internet meme.
And now, here we are, wrist
out.
rockets, which is a pretty cool thing to have.
They begin to fire at Windu, so he deflects their shots and inches backwards. Jango ignites his flamethrower, eventually causing Mace to leap off the balcony to the arena below. As he does this, his robe catches on fire, so midair he whips it off while also deflecting lasers, which is a really badass thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, Mace Windu's pretty cool. I struggle with the militant religious lunatic
Cooler
part.
fighter, though, when you're just watching him fight.
And he is regarded one of the best.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, and he's not one that, like, a casual fan might know is that powerful.
Our friend Spencer, who joins us on the Boob Two Boys podcast, says he's one of his favorite characters.
Yeah.
Good for Spencer.
He's a Maceman.
And I'll go over Mace and his fighting style and kind of some more of that stuff in the Revenge of the Sith episodes.
And that's also when we'll be covering Mace, the rapper that signed to Puff Daddy's label in the 90s.
Yes, and then also Mace Tyrell, who leads the Tyrells in Game of Thrones.
And then I would assume we'll be covering Mace's, the weapon, the
like the
ball and
Morningstar,
chain kind of weapon, yeah.
As well as the spray that you put in people's eyes.
Yeah, and then I assume on top of that, I'm out of maces.
Yeah, I don't have any more either. And actually, a little fun fact here, too, in the Revenge of the Sith novelization of the movie, Mace Windu actually thinks back about this moment a lot because he believes if he would have struck Dooku down then and there, could he have prevented the war? So that's a big moment, and would a Jedi do that?
I wonder if he ever thinks back even further to the 1,000 times he was like, I'm sure it's fine.
Maybe that was a bad idea. Pandemonium erupts and the Geonosian spectators fly off while more battle droids come rushing into the arena. They're attacking Jedi everywhere. Some notable Jedi that are present here at the fight. We've got Kit Fisto, him and his squid head. Coleman Trebor is here with his dinosaur head. Luminara Unduli and her apprentice Barriss Offee. They have green heads. And then, of course, Ki-Adi-Mundi with his big dick head.
Yeah.
All here. Plenty of no-namers, too, that just kind of die in this. Of course, we get some whimsy, too. We see the battle droid with C-3PO's head and the C-3PO with the battle droid's head come barging in, and the one with his head is confused as to why it keeps screaming, "Die, Jedi dogs!" But don't worry, R2's here to perform battlefield surgery and repair the legend back to his intact self while he nags the whole time.
That's part of his thing, even on the battlefield.
Nagging. Eventually, Anakin and Obi-Wan are given lightsabers, and Padme snatches up a blaster rifle, so the trio begin taking out Geonosians and battle droids. At one point, Padme jumps on a big lizard horse. It has a chariot attached to it, so Anakin jumps in that, and the two just fly around killing things.
Pretty cool.
Jedi Master Coleman Trebor. He's a hero. At least he attempts to be a hero here. He jumps up onto the balcony where Count Dooku watches the event unfold, and Lizard Man, he prepares to swing his lightsaber to take the Separatist leader out, but timely shots from Jango Fett blast the Jedi, and he plummets to the ground below.
Man, now
dead.
can he regenerate his parts? He's a lizard man.
I think he lost too many parts, but there's a chance. R.I.P. Coleman
You can't
Trebor.
regenerate a heart.
Gone too soon. A hero forever in our
Pour
hearts.
out a glass of blue.
After shooting the Jedi, Jango does a cool gun twirl, and Dooku just kind of gives him a big grin. Also, Dooku, if he cared, could have just fucked Coleman Trebor up.
Yeah,
but he's just like, whatever. I'm old.
I don't care. Man, Newt's still back there like, I hope the Senator's dead. That's like all he's focused on.
Unfortunately for the Jedi, though, the Reek is still on the loose, and it knocks Kenobi to the ground and causes Mace Windu to lose his lightsaber briefly. Jango fires up his jetpack and flies down to the arena, seeing his opportunity. He dives to grab Windu's lightsaber, but it escapes his grasp and flies back to its master, who retrieved it with the Force. The Reek then headbutts Jango and tramples the Mandalorian. As it turns around to finish the job, one well-placed blaster bolt puts the beast down for good, though. Windu sees his opportunity here and rushes Jango while deflecting his blaster bolts left and right, and with a swift 2 swings, Mace slices the gun out of his hand and then swiftly removes the head of the Mandalorian.
This was more badass than I remembered it.
It was pretty badass.
I didn't remember the beheading for some reason.
Well, the helmet with head in it flies off to the right, starts bouncing along the ground, and the body slumps motionless. Dooku sees this and is quite shocked, and we also see young Boba Fett aghast as he just watched his father slaughtered right in front of him.
Yeah.
So I'm going to touch on a couple of things here. The first time I watched this, and for many years, I thought this is kind of like a shit way for Jango to go out. He was just, boom, beaten. In one way, it's cool because it does show Mace Windu's pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
In the other, it sucks for Jango. However, apparently, Lucas made changes to this scene because after the initial run in theaters, people thought like I did, that it's like, this sucked. He couldn't do anything. Well, all along, Lucas intended for us to see one key detail that's really easy to miss, which is seconds before the gun is cut out of his hand, Jango fires up his jetpack. So he should shoot away. The Reek damaged the jetpack, so it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So he enhanced the sparks that fly from it to show it's broken, but it's still really easy to miss. But that's the point. It's like, Jango's, of course, prepared
he was at
for
a
this.
disadvantage. And he needs every advantage. He's not
forced.
He doesn't have god powers, yeah.
Right. So pretty tough. It just all makes sense when you kind of sit down and think about it.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to mention is that when the helmet flies off with the head in it, you actually see the shadow of the head whoosh out of the helmet, which makes the scene later be a little less creepy. But yeah, if you want to go and pause the scenes, you'll see the head shadow.
Now I want to.
It's kind of amazing. Anakin and Padme get knocked off their space war chariot, and she climbs into it to hide behind the Jedi and fire a gun at robots. Anakin says to her, "You call this a diplomatic solution?" And she says, "No, I call it aggressive negotiations."
Yeah.
See, they love each other.
They flipped roles from earlier.
Obi-Wan is busy twirling away at his lightsaber when his old nemesis, the Acklay, comes walking up behind him, but this time, Kenobi's armed. He chops the giant monster into pieces without effort, hacking off its limbs and stabbing it in the heart, all while his beautiful Jedi mullet flows in the wind.
Yeah, and then later he'll return home and go back to work at the meat plant.
That's right. Got to cut some meat, steal some meat, check in, check out. Overall, the battle is not going well for the Jedi, however. They are falling left and right and being led into a circle as they're surrounded by more and more battle droids. Finally rounded up, Count Dooku motions for the droids to stop. Dooku yells down to the Jedi, saying they fought valiantly, but the battle is over. If they were to surrender, then they will be spared. But Mace Windu says he refuses to be a hostage, only to be bartered away. And I can imagine, Ki-Adi-Mundi, well, no, that's fine. You can barter me.
I really wanted Mace Windu to just say, no! And then they keep fighting right after that.
Well, Dooku says, "I'm sorry, my old friend." And the droids begin to go back into battle mode. But seconds before they attack again, Padme points up into the sky and says, "Look! It's Yoda! He brought one guy!" Well, it's a lot of one guy, but it's still just one guy.
Yeah.
It's a battalion of the new Grand Army of the Republic.
that they didn't even think was necessary.
He tells the clones to create a perimeter around the survivors, or, well, around the survivors a perimeter create, and the clones descend, gathering up all the remaining Jedi and Padme, while Count Dooku can only stand by and watch. And there's a great, the robot chicken Star Wars stuff, most of it's like whatever. There are some really great ones. There's a great one of this scene where Yoda says the thing stupid like he does.
Yeah, backward syntax.
One of the clones is like, this is a battle situation. Life and death could be a matter of seconds, so I need you to speak with me clearly. You're clearly a smart creature. You understand and have been alive for a long time, so you know how our words work. Yoda pauses for a second, goes, you've given me a lot to think about. On the barren battlefield, C-3PO rises whole again next to R2-D2 and proclaims, oh, I've had the most peculiar dream. Whimsy. Also, Boba Fett picks up his dad's helmet and somberly holds it against his head.
And then he says, I've had the most peculiar dream.
On board a LAAT gunship, and that's what they're called, L-A-A-T, Yoda tells Mace Windu that if Dooku escapes, he'll be able to rally more systems to his cause. So clearly the plan here is to take him out at any cost.
Yeah.
Now back at the main Separatist compound, Nute Gunray is, guess what? Freaking out. He's mad that the Jedi had such a massive army so quickly. He wants to send all units into war, but Dooku praises patience and pretends to not have any idea about the clones. Poggle the Lesser says their communications have been jammed, and he reveals he's going to send his warriors to hide in the catacombs. The Jedi must not find their designs for the ultimate weapon, however. Dooku agrees and tells him he'll take the designs with him to his master, and we see just what the ultimate weapon is when a little hologram image pops up out of the flash drive.
You'll never fucking believe what it is.
Death Star.
What?
Yep.
You mean the first ultimate weapon?
Poggle the Lesser made the Death Star.
More like Poggle the Most.
You could have gone with greater. But most,
More
I think,
that.
is way better.
It's all
the
of
most.
it. It's the most you can have.
Poggle Infinity. There's like 20 minutes here of fake space robots fighting fake space New Zealanders in plastic armor.
It's so long.
We're going to skip most of what happens here, but what I will say is I can very much appreciate the work that went into this.
Yeah.
There is so much, because this kind of CGI was not done at this point. And to the artists, to the designers, holy shit, this is impressive. And it genuinely looks good, not only for the times, I think it looks fine. Nowadays.
It looks totally fine.
It's just, I mean, you and I in particular don't care about these kind of action scenes,
No,
so it's just kind of boring.
It's not. It's overly long, and it's not particularly compelling. For you and I, that's CGI battles are that for the most part. It's like it's hard to even visualize what's happening.
Yeah, it's just not that interesting to look at. But like I said, I can appreciate it. And I think that's a big problem with this movie is Lucas and his team were more counting on the fact that people will be shocked and awed at how grandiose it is. And maybe they were a little, but not as much. But I'll posit this to you. This is a movie that I think if you saw in the theaters with the surround sound and the giant screen, this would be a little more impactful. But now that we're all watching on our phones and our
I think so.
TVs at
And
home,
like I saw this in the theater the first time I saw it.
I wasn't that into it, right?
And I wasn't that into it. I think it's more, but again, back to your point, I've never been a guy who's like, give me a 30-minute battle scene.
Yeah, that's us. Count Dooku goes to a docking bay where he boards his cool flying jet ski, and he decides to just wave runner off into the desert.
I like to imagine his plan was like, I hope we don't lose. But if we do, I'm getting on my jet ski.
I will totally have a blast.
And he does. One of the true joys of Attack of the Clones, if you can make it 3 hours in, is Christopher Lee, at this point 150 years old, just speeding around in a CGI like jet ski thing in the air. It's so funny.
The wind blowing through his hair. He's just having a great time.
And he looks very serious.
I don't think he can smile.
No.
I think it's always serious. Like, I'm sure he has fun. It's just he's prevented from smiling.
I think he beat himself out of himself years prior.
Meanwhile, Yoda essentially tells the clones to shoot at things as if they weren't already doing that, and then they continue doing that, eventually knocking a bunch of big orbs out of the sky.
I think he says, around the perimeter a bullet create.
We're finally in the home stretch for what's possibly the worst Star Wars movie of all time. So let's hop on our jet skis, commission a super weapon from some crickets, and take a quick break.
Daddy, can we please rent an airspeeder to fly through the dangerous canyons?
I'm sorry, son, but these prices are just too high for me.
This is the worst name day I've ever had.
Oh no, my friend, this is a mistake. A terrible mistake. They've gone too far. This is madness. There's only one place that guarantees the lowest prices on top-of-the-line models, and that place is Ski Dooku Airsports and Assassin Droids. That's right, the galaxy's best savings can be found off Interstate 19, just west of Caranya, on the planet Sereno. To visit any other facility would be brave, but foolish, my old friend. And don't forget, we offer a 15% military or force user discount. You see, most facilities merely offer twice the price and double the headache, but that's because the dark side has clouded their vision. Surely we can do better. But don't take my word for it. Listen to what satisfied customers have to say.
The banking clan approves of having a rip-roaring good time.
I will gladly take advantage of great prices and reasonable terms, but first I want the senator's head on my desk.
As a full-time librarian, I know the Jedi archives are comprehensive and totally secure, which means there's one thing you can be sure of. Better deals don't exist. Plus Dooku is just so dreamy.
The Techno-Union Army is here to party.
As you can see, my bargains are far beyond anyone else's. So when preparing for your family vacation, don't rely on boring, mundane things. Utilize the unorthodox. Rent a Ski Dooku airspeeder and you can count on having a good time. And don't forget, for you puppet masters out there interested in starting an intergalactic war, we also offer top-of-the-line assassin droids. Rent the newest HK model today and receive a performance worthy of recognition in the Jedi archives. So when on vacation, do cool off with Ski Dooku Airsports and Assassin Droids. Tell them Tyrannus sent you.
Signing a lease for a Ski Dooku brand airspeeder or Assassin Droid obligates signing party to a 10-year commitment to the Confederation of Independent Systems. All sales final. Ski Dooku Airsports and Assassin Droids are not liable for wipeout or treason.
It may be difficult to secure the release of that 15% discount after all.
Alongside Padme and Anakin on a gunship, Obi-Wan sees Count Dooku having a total blast scooting around on a speeder, and Kenobi says they need to go take him out. That could end this war.
Did you notice he does like a wheelie?
Well, yeah. I mean, when in Rome, Brian. They begin to chase the elderly man, but two Geonosian ships wind up behind theirs, and they fire blasts at them, which causes it to rock, and Padme goes tumbling out the side to the desert below. This causes Anakin to freak the fuck out. He screams for the clone pilot to put the ship down to go get her, but Obi-Wan is, cool your jets. Like, we have a job to do. And of course, Anakin argues and argues, but Obi-Wan says, we take Dooku out now, we can end this. You need to do your duty, because I can't handle Count Dooku myself. What would Padme do if she were in this situation? Anakin slowly comes around to this and agrees, so they continue.
Again, like a little kid. What would Padme do in this situation, Anakin? She would do her duty. It's like a kid getting in trouble.
Mm-hmm. By this point, the droid army is in full retreat, so Yoda tells a clone to bring him a ship because he's got places to be. Dooku has found his way to a landing platform and scooted his way right in there, but Obi-Wan and Anakin aren't far behind. They depart their gunship, rushing after the former Jedi mere moments before it is blasted out of the sky, and we see like a clone trooper fall hundreds of feet to the ground. Like, they do a lot of death in these movies. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot.
It's all bloodless, so it's fine.
Yeah,
I guess that's their as long as there's no nudity.
The two Jedi come across Dooku talking to some robot while playing with like a podium iPad, and our two heroes ignite their lightsabers.
And then he's like, how many? Table for two? And like with the podium and the little tablet, it really felt like they'd entered a Chili's.
What if you go to a restaurant and the maitre d' is fucking Christopher Lee?
The ghost of Christopher Lee on a speeder, on a land speeder.
As he turns to see them, he pulls back his cape to reveal his weapon, and hothead Anakin says, you're going to pay for the Jedi you killed today, Dooku. Obi-Wan, who by this point at least knows what Dooku is capable of, even if he is an old man. By the way, he's supposed to be Christopher Lee's age, like 78.
Yeah.
So he is an old man at this point. Obi-Wan whispers to Anakin, we'll take him together. You go in on the left, but Anakin interrupts and says, no, I'll take him now. And he rushes Count Dooku, but before he gets even 10 feet from him, Count Dooku shoots lightning bolts out of his hand at him and just like whips him into the wall.
Yep, it's pretty cool. And then he starts bragging about how powerful he is.
He does.
Which, one of my favorite thing about the Sith is they are shit talkers.
Oh, yeah.
And
grandiose.
The Jedi all have all this false humility and then they go and act arrogant. The Sith are at least honest about it.
They know who they are. Well, Dooku calmly walks over to Obi-Wan and says, "As you see, I'm better than you, pussy." And he tells Obi-Wan to back the fuck up, giving Obi-Wan a nice little warning lightning bolt shot. But Obi-Wan is no mere Padawan at this point. He blocks the shot with his lightsaber, saying, "I don't think so. I'm the space police." This causes Dooku to unsheath his lightsaber, but unlike the good guys we've seen so far, as the light comes out of the hilt, it glows a menacing crimson red. And by the way, we don't know that he's Sith at this point. We just think he's the leader of the Separatists. We think he's a fallen Jedi.
We pretty much know.
We do, but you're not supposed to.
But right, it's not official or anything.
Obi-Wan at this point is mostly just a pretty good Jedi. Since the events of the Phantom Menace, the Jedi Order has begun ramping up lightsaber training just out of caution, but they haven't really experienced anything since Darth Maul. Obi-Wan has since switched his stance, basically his fighting style, to Soresu, but he's still pretty early in learning it, so he's not the expert of that quite yet. Meanwhile, Dooku is quite possibly the second strongest lightsaber fighter in the galaxy, and he shows it here by basically just fucking around with Kenobi, taunts him the whole time. Right in the middle of the fight, Dooku's like, "Come on, baby. Surely you could do better, or you're just a big baby."
This is like Barry Bonds asking for a child to throw him a pitch.
Yeah.
He's taunting him because he knows neither one of them can do anything to him.
And just like Dooku, Barry Bonds would be pretty mean about it.
He totally would. Barry Bonds was big on like killing a bunch of people in a speeder.
Anakin is beginning to regain his composure, and just in time, because Dooku overpowers Obi-Wan and slashes him precisely in the arm and leg, basically immobilizing the Jedi. Just as Dooku does some cool swirls, he raises his saber overhead and swings down with the intent of a deadly killing blow, but Anakin is rushed in and at the last second utilizes his blade to stop Dooku from killing his master. Obi-Wan tosses Anakin his blade, and for a brief moment the Padawan duels Dooku using two lightsabers, and this lore-wise is the smartest thing to do, because Anakin will become a great fighter. He's still a Padawan at this point.
Yeah.
So really what he's doing with the two sabers is just kind of knocking Dooku off his balance a little.
Buying
this is not
time.
something he's used to. Biding his time, exactly. Because typically fighters won't use two blades unless it's a specialized form. And by this point, I don't think we'd really seen any Jedi with dual blades aside from like games and stuff. So it may not have been canon. Seconds later, the first blade is taken out of the picture after Dooku slices it in half. So Anakin once again tries to kind of change the settings to keep Dooku out of his rhythm. This time he cuts a big power cable which turns off the lights, and I like this. I thought this was a really cool thing.
Yeah, I called it an electricity hose.
That's what it
looked
is.
Kind of like a hose. I liked this too, and I think that if you're gonna do a fight scene where it's very clear to the audience that one person is more powerful, you should have a lot of stuff like this going on to disorient the powerful person.
And that's what he's doing.
Makes it plausible.
I mean, look, as I get older, my night vision goes down. I can't imagine what it'll be at 80 years old. Now Dooku has to see in the dark.
Yeah, just like if I'm old now, most of the time I cut the fucking power. Like if anything's going wrong, I know just cut the power.
Mm-hmm. Messed up this recipe you were making, cut the power.
Oh shit, I left that in the oven too long, cut the power. I'm running late for work, cut the power.
Dooku and Anakin clash blades, and there's some cool rave scenes here where we just see their faces and the glow of their lightsaber blades. And I half expected Wat Tambor, leader of the Techno Union, to come out with a hearty...
Or he just comes in and you hear one of those drops first, like...
touching his knobs.
And then you hear it drop, and then you hear him be like, "It's time to start the party." And then he starts in with the big beats.
Are you ready to listen to the thrum of sonic perfection?
You know his favorite, Watt's favorite percussion instrument?
What's that?
Wat Tambourine. I read that on the back of Space Laffy Taffy wrappers.
Eventually, Anakin does make his mistake, and Dooku takes advantage. He slices the right arm clean off the boy. Using his free hand, he gives a nice old man high-five push to Anakin, slings him violently into Obi-Wan using the Force. Now, Dooku may be really fucking good with a lightsaber, but he's still an old-ass man. So having finished his duel, he lets out a huge sigh, presumably a fart, and just is like, whew, got that over with. And I like that. I really like that scene of Christopher Lee. Like, he's done. He's finished it, and he's just like, whew.
And you can see him kind of eyeballing the room for, like, the nearest couch with a TV in front of it.
I've got to watch Golden Girls.
Now, do you remember how earlier I said Count Dooku may have been the number 2 lightsaber
Oh, I sure
duelist?
do.
That means there's a number 1. And that number 1 creaks his even older ass in here as Dooku turns to see Grandmaster Yoda waddle in the frame. The two old shits greet one another, and Dooku tells the little gremlin that he's interfered in his affairs for the last time. He reaches up and snatches some big chunk of something off the wall using the Force and flings it at the Jedi Master.
Yeah, he's like ripping pipes off the wall.
But hey, Yoda's no punk himself.
No.
He deflects the big thing without much effort, and the two continue this for a bit, with Dooku just flinging things and Yoda flinging them the other way. And Yoda eventually says he senses the dark side inside of Dooku.
You know why? Yoda man.
And again, at this point, I guess we didn't know he was a Sith, just a bad guy. So to the characters, too, this is a big reveal that he has the dark side. I mean, the lightning bolts were a big giveaway, but, you know.
Right, and how he's trying to kill
Everyone.
Anakin and Obi-Wan and everyone, yeah.
There's been some debate as to whether or not Dooku actually wanted to kill either of them. Because in particular with Kenobi, he cuts him twice,
with
but doesn't kill him.
Kenobi, he does not appear to be trying.
So I think part of that would be like, this is my apprentice's apprentice. I'm not going to do this. But the overhead slash, I wonder, like, was he just trying to bait Anakin?
Yeah, that's really, really tough.
Well, and I think it really was, because from the outset, Palpatine's goal when meeting Anakin was he'll be one of us.
Yeah.
So I think Dooku's in on that knowledge, and it's like, I want him to get mad.
Okay.
So I've
that could make
rationalized it in my
sense.
head.
Yeah, he's trying to get Anakin to harness the dark side. Little does he know, Anakin's like 95% of the way there without any Sith intervention.
At least both feet are in there. Dooku says he's become more powerful than any Jedi, even Yoda. The two basically stand there flinging lightning bolts at one another for a bit, and Dooku eventually stops to say, it's pretty clear this is going nowhere. Time to sword fight. The two ignite their lightsabers, and Yoda lets out a shriek that I didn't anticipate hearing.
Great.
He leaps at Dooku, and the two just go batshit crazy on one another for a minute. Yoda's bouncing off around shit. Dooku's blocking and flailing, trying to get ahead on the Jedi Master. Yoda somersaults off of like a dozen things in a row, and he begins to push an advantage over Dooku, and they lock blades. Yoda tells Dooku he's fought well, but Dooku retorts, this is just the beginning, and he quickly reaches out to break a really big thing, which then starts to collapse onto Anakin and Obi-Wan, sure to crush them beneath it. Yoda snaps out of his stance to catch the big thing, and with Yoda distracted, Dooku takes the opportunity to flee onto his ship and speed away.
Classic bad guy tactic, make the good guy have to save people.
Now, here is the thing with the Dooku-Yoda fight. Lucas said when he was making the film, he was like, this is it. If the CGI people can't make this at least look semi-good, we're toast. It's going to be too funny. And it is a little funny, but I actually think they did.
I think it's fine.
Goal.
I think it's totally fine.
And as a kid, I was like, this is so fucking cool.
I didn't think it was funny at all when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Now it is kind of hilarious, but part of that's just because the absurdity of it on its face.
But from a graphic standpoint, from a storyline standpoint, this is fine.
No, this works. Cool. This absolutely works.
And Lucas thought the same thing. He's like, we did it. Great job, guys. On the docking bay, Padme has arrived with a battalion of clones, and they fire haphazardly at the fleeing Dooku, but no avail. He gets away. Yoda drops that big thing safely off to the side as Obi-Wan and Anakin realize they shit the bed on this one, and Yoda lets out a disappointed sigh while gathering up his walking stick with the Force. Overall, the good guys pretty much fucked up here.
Yeah, they did. Although you could argue that they fucked up by essentially arriving on Geonosis with just a couple of people. They're lucky they got out this good in a way.
Well, to that point, this is it. There aren't that many Jedi in the galaxy. They're stretched thin by this point, so this is the Jedi
This
Forces.
is it, but I mean initially, and I get why they're like, Obi-Wan, you go scope it out.
Right.
You show up with a couple of forces at the beginning. Maybe he's not chained up fighting off Rancors.
Well, because surely they had more soldiers of some sort. Maybe not the clones already, but they could have. Because Mace Windu arrives first with the Jedi. Didn't they have 500 foot soldiers?
Right. Enough to deter the initial arena games from even happening, maybe.
Dooku has since fled into space, and he's approaching the capital planet of Coruscant. And side note here, his spaceship has what's called a solar sail, and this is actually conceived based on actual science. Scientists believe when we can travel in space, we will utilize solar sails. So the design of this was based on real stuff or real concepts anyway, because they basically collect energy from the sun behind you and push you.
Solar energy always works, even in false worlds.
So get out there, buy yourself some solar panels.
Buy yourself a sun.
Not S-O-N either. Don't do that.
No.
Klieg's over here like, what about a wife?
Like, well, I didn't know you could do that.
I can buy my whole family. Get out of here, Owen. I've got to go start Penthouse.
Dooku finds his way to an industrial sector, and we hear the familiar chanting music that signifies the Sith. Brian, if you thought we were done with old people, boy, I have a surprise for you, because we get one more old person. After landing, Dooku exits his ship to meet with a hooded elderly figure. It's Darth Sidious. Sidious greets Dooku with a hearty, "Welcome home, Lord Tyrannus. Did you bring me any souvenirs? I want a snow globe." So it's all officially revealed. We now know that Count Dooku is Darth Tyrannus. We had an inkling. Everyone knows it. It's in plain writing.
Newt Gunray is not standing around like, but what about Padme's head on a platter?
I mean, he probably is. We just don't see it.
Yeah, it's off screen.
He is an apprentice to Sith Master Darth Sidious. Dooku tells the cloaked figure that he has good news. The war has begun. Sidious is pleased, saying everything is going according to plan. Sometime in the future, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, and Yoda are back at the Jedi Council, and Kenobi asks the Masters if they believe what Dooku said about the Sith controlling the Senate. Yoda says Dooku has joined the dark side, so lies and deceit are his ways now. Perhaps he's just sowing discord, creating mistrust amongst them.
Again, not seeing the nuance of Dooku's position because they've not taken time to try and understand why he arrived at it.
Right. But Mace actually does say, you know what, no matter what, we got to keep a close eye on the Senate. Something's going on here that we don't know. Obi-Wan says he admits without the clones, the battle would not have been a victory. And saying this really pisses Yoda off.
He's like, victory, you say? Begun the Clone War has. Sure sell a lot of toys we will, but gone is the shroud covering the dark side.
The Imperial March is heard as a massive army of clones marches through the streets of Coruscant. And on a balcony, we see Bail Organa, Palpatine, and a whole bunch of monsters surveying the army. Some of the spaceships take off. Song plays some more. Although the camera, for some reason, continues playing the Imperial March, the bad guy music, and focuses on Palpatine. I don't get it. The Chancellor, the good guy, the Republic.
That's weird. Must have been a mix-up they just never corrected. And that's the end of the movie.
Oh, wait, no. We missed one part.
No, I think that's it. I don't have anything else.
You don't have anything else, huh?
Uh-uh.
That's it. Moving on. Or we head to the shores of the Lake of Naboo.
What are we doing there?
It turns out Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala are there with C-3PO and R2-D2 and a mysterious figure. Turns out they're getting hitched.
Why?
I know. Why?
Why?
You would think once she got off the planet where she thought she was going to die, Padme would have come to her senses.
And been like, oh shit, never mind. That's just one of those things you say to someone.
The two figures kiss. His now robot right hand links with her still human left hand. And the two look out at the sunset. And boom, credits roll.
There's nothing like a love story where they don't like each other even. Oh, it's so beautiful.
And where you can hold a robot hand at the end of it.
That's pretty cool.
Do you think C-3PO talked through the whole wedding ceremony?
Yes.
I'm sure
they should have just had him be the officiant. He's going to be talking anyway.
Well, let's do final thoughts on this movie. We can talk about how bad it is. Do you still, and I asked this at the beginning of the episode 1 of Attack of the Clones, do you still believe this is the worst Star Wars movie? So far, because we still have more to watch.
Yes, it's worse than episode 1. I think its closest competition for me is going to come when we get to episode 9.
Oof, episode 9 is bad.
For a while here, we're going to be on a good run, but this was a really uneven movie that mixes its messages multiple times. Its central character, Anakin, is extremely unlikable and even heinous, like an evil guy before ever joining the Sith.
And I think really what you should have done is made him really likable by this point in the series.
You should make me believe. Okay, and if someone's like, well, but he turns into I watched Breaking Bad.
Yeah, we know what happens there.
Yeah, and you know what's going to happen from the beginning, but you have a good actor in the role and a well-thought-out, well-conceived character, and you can make it make sense. With Anakin, he's never likable. And similarly, like, Amidala is way more likable the first half of this movie than she has been because Natalie Portman kind of understands the character better. But then you have her contradicting what her character is all about several times. There's a lot of moments like that kind of undermine being able to hold this movie up with the better ones in the series.
And I do pretty much agree with you. I think this really is the worst one.
And it's boring.
It is boring for a lot of it. Like, you can have the mystery, the Obi-Wan stuff.
Yeah.
You can have a lot of the concepts they used in it, but the execution was poor.
We could have known less and had the mystery be more of a real mystery.
Right.
I think that would have been one way to help it right up top. And then the other thing that I think just was egregious is the over-reliance on kind of goofy action scenes in place of some of the character building moments that might have gotten me to believe that Anakin was a good kid who went bad, or that Padme was slowly worn down by Anakin over time.
Well, you said this movie was egregious. Next movie won't be egregious. It'll be egregious.
Oh, I cannot wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either.
I have held off on this whole time. Yeah. Because after I finished this one, I wanted to watch it, but I thought, no, I'm going to wait. I've not seen this movie in years. I know I'm going to actually have a good time watching it. So let me wait until we're done discussing this turd.
Well, I do want to point out, you said one thing about mentioning episode 9, how you're going to feel when you get to that point. Yeah, that struck something in my head. 9 is cool in the same way that this one is cool from the lore perspective.
Yeah.
Finding out Count Dooku in this, or, we'll get to Palpatine returning then, but I like Palpatine, so I think it's kind of cool to see that stuff, but also it's a terrible decision at the same time. So I think that's an excellent point with that.
I really wonder, and this is just me wondering out loud, is the deeper lore content in episode 2, episode 9, there as a result of, we don't have a lot of story to tell, but we can do some fun stuff filling in gaps in the lore.
That's true. And
I don't know if that's the case.
Well, and that's largely what happened here, because it's the Clone Wars show.
Yeah.
Which takes place between this movie and the next movie, really fleshed out a lot of this stuff. So I think that's one way that Star Wars can get better for people, is if you do take in the extra content, because that does flesh out these weird little things. Because if you don't know all the stuff I told you about Dooku, he's a guy that just shows up, beats people up for 5 minutes, and then dies in 5 minutes in the next movie.
There are a lot of characters in Star Wars who you would not know their significance without some, rooted knowledge in lore stuff.
I did want to say that the way they made this movie was groundbreaking, even more so than it was with The Phantom Menace. I think I said last episode, this was the first movie to ever be filmed on full digital, which is cool. But the actual making of the movie, there's a documentary thing on Disney Plus after Attack of the Clones. You can find it in the more section with the deleted scenes, where they talk about, I forget the term they use, but it's basically like storyboarding times 10. Whereas with a normal movie, you storyboard things out. Lucas said that doesn't work for an action movie or the way he makes movies, because you won't know which way an actor should turn versus, a lot of the minor details. So what they did with this movie is, instead of doing storyboards, they would do like mock animations and then consult it and set it up in time. So 5-minute scene in the movie was a 5-minute animation in pre-production. So then Lucas could say, okay, well, let's add this here, take this away here, switch this. Then they would get that point down, reanimate it better with a higher quality, make adjustments there. Then they could film it. And when they filmed it with the actors in front of the blue screens, they would have the actors watch it. So they would know.
They'd know kind of what they were doing.
Turn and do exactly this. Now, from a standpoint of an actor, that kind of sucks, because your goal is to act, and that's not natural.
And feel it more.
Yes. But from a planning standpoint, holy cow, that's amazing.
And this does bring to mind another question about George Lucas I have, which is sometime in the 90s, before the prequels began, when he was doing kind of the, remastering of the original trilogy, he kind of shifted from, I'm super interested in these pulpy space stories, to I think computers are cool. And again, he did a lot of very noteworthy things with them, but I do think that for a while, these movies lose a lot of the fun, because he isn't as concerned with what maybe he sought out to do at the beginning of creating Star Wars.
I agree with that. I think ultimately, before the prequels were made, the best thing that could have happened was Lucas was allowed to play with his toys.
Yeah.
And he wants to be a filmmaker, not a storyteller.
Yes.
I think that's the best way to say it. So he needs a storyteller.
I think his career pretty much bears that out. He's not an auteur, so to speak.
Lucas was the last filmmaker who made these blockbusters independently. He had Fox be the distribution studios, but no one told him, no, you can't do that. No, we want to make this better.
When you think about it, there's only a few guys in history who ever could have, because you'd have to become wealthy at a young enough age.
Yeah. And he talks about that. If you watch any of these documentaries, he'll say, I financed this, or when I had to finance this. He talks about it like that's a big problem. And I'm sure it was, but also they made a lot of money, so
Yeah.
it worked out for them.
The toys alone.
But that's the thing, though, is at least with this prequel trilogy, that is exactly what it is. It's a man's vision. It's not a bunch of Disney lawyers sitting around saying you can't do that.
It is one guy's thing more. As a result, I do think it makes a little more sense than the newest trilogy when taken as a whole.
Sure. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode. The next time we come back around, we'll be covering the first half of Revenge of the Sith, which is by far the best prequel movie.
Yeah.
And genuinely a good Star Wars movie and a pretty good movie.
Yeah, it's
overall.
pretty good. And it's like so clearly to me the best of these three.
So we're going to have a lot of fun with that.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Yes, we are. I'm really excited. We talked about it before, but we're entering for sure a really strong 4-movie run of the next 4 we're covering. And then, of course, The Force Awakens, it's your mileage may vary.
I mean, it has some good points.
I'm very interested in rewatching it.
And I really, of the movies, have not watched the sequel trilogy all that much. I've seen The Force Awakens a handful of times, Last Jedi a handful of times. No joke. I have seen The Rise of Skywalker once on opening night in the theater. I still haven't watched it
I've seen, I believe, the first 2 of the new trilogy twice and the final one once.
Well, we'll up those numbers by 1
We're
at least.
going to be upping those numbers. I'm also really curious to watch A New Hope within a few weeks of watching The Force Awakens, because I think they're going to feel really similar.
Yeah. Before we get out of here, just a couple of quick reminders. We are the Boo2 Inc. Podcast Network. We have other shows on our network, including the BoobTube Boys. Brian, myself, and Spencer. We talk TV shows. We do this, but for TV shows, each week we have a new episode. Every 2 weeks we have a new show. Go check it out. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. You'll enjoy it.
Now, we could be covering anything from, we mentioned the Obi-Wan show.
Yep.
Renegade, Saved by the Bell.
Father Knows Best, the 1960s TV show.
Yeah, you just don't know what we're going to do.
That's right. Well, you can also find us on Twitter. I'm at Manly Van Lee. Brian is at
Loud Guitar Brian.
We're also on TikTok now. I started a TikTok
That's right.
account. It's actually, I got to be honest, TikTok's kind of great from a creator perspective because you just make these short little videos. I can take little jokes and bits that we do, put them on there. So follow us on TikTok. That's at Boo2 Inc. BOOTUINC. And then, of course, for all things Boo2 Inc., check out our website. It's live now for the most part. Boo2inc.com, BOOTUINC.com. We will have these podcasts there. We'll have written work that we write, videos, goofy stuff. Just check it out. It's great.
Do it. It's worth your time, damn it.
And I never can come up with a way to send off, so you do it this time.
Space!
Effortlessly. He chops the giant monster into pieces without effort, hacking off its limb.